The black vote is not going to be for.
Contributor appreciation. Welcome to the Soapbox with my wife, Mrs. Thomas.
Sorry.
Guys, hope you all are doing all right. Today we're going to have contributor appreciation. I'm sorry I missed you all last week. I've been having stomach issues, having trouble keeping stuff down, but it's been better this week, so here I am. And I like doing these. My wife likes doing these, I think. She may not own up to it entirely, but I think she likes it. So, let's see. We have several stories. I think we have some really good stories, and we have people who've given their...
Wait a minute. I have to do my spiel.
Oh, yeah. Do your spiel.
Because you got a lot going on over there.
Yeah, I'm trying to...
All right.
I'm trying to multitask.
It's Sunday. I was going to say this is the day for contributor appreciation, but every so often it does happen on other days. Zox is saying that we have an echo. Does anybody else hear an echo?
An echo?
Can you check the volume? No, volume looks good. Zox, he's the only one saying
reverb. No, I don't see anything.
In fact, anybody else having issues with audio? Hey, Victor. William S.
Let's see. Are you guys still having issues?
Sparkle
okay,
Boom.
Good. I think it was because the other thing was running in the background while we were talking at the same time. So it gives, like if you're running a video with your mic on, it gives an echo effect.
Oh,
that makes
okay.
sense.
Yeah, I got it.
All right.
Wait,
so let's do a spiel.
Okay.
I was affirming your...
I don't need affirmation. Not in this.
It helps
regard.
sometimes. It helps sometimes.
All right. So my name is Aisha, a.k.a. Mrs. Thomas, a.k.a. Mrs. Progressive Soapbox, all that good stuff. And I pop in every now and then to help out with these contributor appreciation shows.
Yes, she does.
They are slotted for once a week where Jamal takes a show out to give appreciation for everybody who contributes and supports the channel. So what we do is post a post on the Patreon platform, and we ask the patrons to give us their topic suggestions. Also, you mentioned we missed a show last week. Technically, there were no topic suggestions, so we did not have technically content. So make sure if you are a patron,
we have two
log in and submit your topic suggestions. And even if you don't post it to the actual post each week, send a message. You can also see Jamal's email down in the description box below. Right. So submit your topic suggestions there as well. If you're not a patron and you're not familiar with what the Patreon platform is, it is a platform, again, that link is down in the description box below, where you can say, my hair is doing something weird, excuse me, where you can say, I want to make sure this person can continue to create content and I'm going to support them. And you make a commitment.
The Hill's opinion
once
contributor
a week,
Liz Peek writes in a new op-ed, quote, Hillary Clinton continues to hover in the wings, ready to step forward.
You make a commitment to give monetarily $1, $5, $10, whatever it is, and every dollar does help, so thank you. That way Jamal can make sure that he continues to create content every now and then, or not every now and then. Oftentimes, YouTube will demonetize lots of videos. Yeah. They'll kick people out of the subscribers. A week or two ago when they switched the platform, they actually messed up some of the videos, so he had to reload a few videos.
No, that was my fault.
Oh.
No, that was my fault. So we did the show the other day, I think it was maybe a week ago. And they did something in the background where they were like updating the system, and it screwed with the activation code that allows me to push the videos out.
Oh, my bad.
But no, I didn't understand the system. So they've updated the system. The entire system is different.
I'm not finished on my spiel.
I hate it. I want to go back to the old system. I've gotten to the point of started to use it, and I love their editor. The editor is good. But not familiar with the system. I started going through it, and I thought that some of the live streams that I was doing had already been loaded. And so it was just kind of extraneous information. Well, those were videos.
Okay, wait, I am in the middle of my spiel. Come on, bro.
I was helping you.
I get one thing.
I was giving you information.
I get one thing. Don't take this from me.
Go for it. I just wanted to correct the record. I didn't want to hit YouTube for shit that they didn't do.
I understand. That's fair. That's good. Dillyall357 says, I have a topic in Patreon. We will be getting to those, and thank you for our first super chat. As always, I am looking at my phone because I am following you all's chats throughout the video, and so every now and then I will pull those to bring those into the conversation. If you want to make sure that what the
go ahead, do your spiel.
If you want to make sure that your comment is discussed live, you can always use a super chat to make it stand out. If you are not giving monetarily, and right now I'm just letting people join, so I'm just kind of rambling. But if you're not giving to the channel through Patreon, still thank you for the other ways that people support.
Like
so
the video,
through the
share the video.
Hush.
I'm helping
Can
you.
You're gonna?
I'm helping you.
I will
You
give
need to
you a
focus on your
coupon
spiel.
if you can let me do the spiel up until the end
Go
and
for it.
not say anything.
Go
No,
for it.
not now because
Well,
you've already
you
fucked
said
that.
you were rambling.
But next time.
Let me just say it this way: when you're doing the show, you shouldn't tell the audience that you're rambling,
That's
even
my
if you're
style.
rambling.
That's my style.
But rambling is not necessarily a positive quality.
Well, I don't. Everything I do isn't necessarily positive
I'm just trying
quality.
to help you. Constructive criticism.
Okay, well,
Don't be petty.
don't,
Don't be petty. Don't be petty. Don't act that way.
oh my goodness. All right, so moving on. If you're giving through some other avenue, thank you still. And if you're not giving monetarily, still thank you for the support. Make sure that you are subscribed, hit the bell notification, and keep an eye out for new videos. Every weekday, Monday to Friday, 12 to 2 p.m. Eastern. You can also tune into this channel live because Bob and Jamal host Political Misfits every weekday on Radio Sputnik, but it is streamed here as well. So thank you guys. Thank you. This show is for you. Make sure that you give us your topic suggestions. Somebody mentioned tweeting. Yes,
Yeah,
you can
I'm on
add
Twitter.
Jamal. He's very active on Twitter all day long.
Pretty much.
And so if you have something that you want him to discuss outside of Patreon, that is an option as well.
Yes. Look what I got in the mail.
I got one for you and special.
The President of the United States signed my letter. $1,200. Yes. What are you doing with your $1,200?
It's gone.
Are you going to be able to live off that for what, 3 months?
It lasted for about 3 hours.
Yeah, yeah. How much we pay?
And
what,
you're like, oh, let's wait,
$1,900 for like
whoa.
rent or something. So, how many places would this even cover the rent? Think about what I'm asking here. Many people weren't getting their unemployment, meaning what 80% of the people or 79% of the people weren't getting their unemployment, which means that those people didn't have cash. Now, I know for myself, when I left my last job and moved into just kind of doing my online thing as my job at that point, or career, the unemployment to kind of mind the gap never happened. Because the moment that the company or does something that slows the process down. Because the thought is, if you slow the process down where the person can get unemployment benefits, then at the very least, the person may get a job before you ever have to pay out. So you have all of these systems where these guys don't want to pay, so they don't invest in those systems. So now that they need to flood money into the unemployment system, it's not there. The system can't take it. One case had, Texas, 1 million phone calls or 2 million phone calls in one day
For unemployment.
for unemployment.
I have a friend whose boyfriend is out of work. They sent him home. He's like furloughed, so that means he get his job back, but he was supposed to be collecting unemployment.
Right.
He's been out for a month.
That's my point.
And still hasn't gotten any money. And she's like, well, the good thing is he'll get back pay. I said, yeah, well, what if he was evicted between now and then? You know what I mean? Thankfully, they live together, and so...
most people live paycheck to paycheck. And I'm saying that literally. Most people don't have $500 in the bank. Literally. And you have a situation where if you have that many people who are living paycheck to paycheck, I would wager that the people who are living paycheck to paycheck are, on the service side of the industry. Meaning when these stores are shutting down, when these restaurants are shutting down, when these spas are shutting down, those people who don't necessarily get paid handsomely take the axe. Now, some of the companies and businesses and everything else go bust, but when those businesses go bust, those people also lose their jobs. And we're talking on the level of, 30 million people losing their job? That number is only going to go higher because the coronavirus is getting worse in many of those states. Yesterday had the highest toll for the COVID-19 virus, what I think was, 2,000 or 2,900?
2,900 or
yeah, it's
something like that.
2,900. So they're opening the economy up at the exact same time, but the COVID virus is still raging.
So wait, before you move on from that, Lily Rose said California is given an extra 600 of employment on top of the 400 a week. That's nice.
That's California.
That's going to help, but again, that's California, and the cost of living there is
strange. Oh yeah, it's
much higher. Yeah. Not to mention, if you can't get it, it doesn't help you. If you are waiting for a month, exactly.
Yeah.
Because like you said, living paycheck to paycheck, you have no money in savings, you lost your job, and now you're waiting on that check. It took you a week to know that you were going to get, you know what I mean? Like,
it puts people
it's
in
nice,
balance.
but
because think about it for the moment. My mom, we went paycheck to paycheck. That's how we lived. She didn't have huge amount of extraneous cash and everything else. Everything else was somewhat of a struggle to get from point A to point B. And in that situation, not getting a paycheck is desperate. Like, there is no backup. There is no nothing else. I mean, it's the rent is due and you don't have the money because you're needing the paycheck to pay the rent. Right. And it was that direct. And you have a lot of those people that aren't working now. And it's like, how are they going to get paid? Wait. And there's one last point. Donald Trump, even though he's giving you this check for $1,200, the reality of it is he's doing everything in his power for the owner class of this country to get you back to work. Now, you could say that's great, but the reality of it is the reason you're not working, it's not because they don't want you to work. Of course, they want you at those factories. They want you at those stores. They want you at those restaurants. The issue is a lot of people have been dying when they were doing that. Yeah. Like, look at the meat industry. Donald Trump is forcing the meat industry, an industry where I think it was like 70% at some of those places were coming down with the COVID-19 virus. Does that stuff get on the meat? Like, and do you really want, like, you can go without meat for a while if it means those people are going to die in that process. Meat is not necessarily completely required, especially in the situation where it's like, you need to find other ways of doing this stuff. It's not forever. And maybe that's where I think of this. I think of this in the sense of shit happens. Like, it's not like some of these people are making these arguments about liberty and freedom. It's nonsense. What are you talking about? There's a virus. The virus has been getting a lot of people sick. Start there. At the moment you say, okay, this thing is spreading, we need to stop the spread. How do we do it in the Spanish flu? Social distancing to cut down on the number of people. Meaning the logic of it kind of writes itself. It's not something that's trying to be imposed. Donald Trump and the 1% in that class is not going to be the people who are working at those stores. They're not going to be the people exposed. Jeff Bezos is not going to be out there selling iPhones for his tablets. None of that stuff. It's going to be people like you, me, family, just basic workers putting themselves in harm's way when they open this economy back up. And whether people will flood those stores or not, who knows? You might have some people who are probably skittish. But the point is, do you really want to put people back in this situation? Now, by giving you a $1,200 check, and only giving you a $1,200 check, it creates a starvation situation where you would, to some degree, side with this notion of, I got to get back to work. If it's between your health and work, I would guarantee you the majority of the people will take the work. So this puts people in desperate situations in order to back up his political goals of opening back up the economy. Meaning this creates pressure.
$1,200 isn't helping.
Exactly. It's not enough.
And then you're talking about, you mentioned how much are people's rent.
Yeah, just rent by itself.
My dad had a medication that was $400 a month.
Wow.
Imagine and he has good health insurance.
Yeah.
But think about the cost of prescriptions that some people have, the bills that you have outside of just your rent. You know what I mean? Like, that's not even outside of rent. That probably doesn't cover, a lot of people's expenses. But let me read these super chats before you go on. We're at about 150 people. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up if you are enjoying the content. It helps YouTube's algorithm let more people know that we are live. So Ben Riley, thank you for the super chat. Ben says, understand your game theory. Capitalism isn't about making opportunities, but restricting them to win the game, i.e. chess. Democracy is another game.
Yes.
Yeah. Megan Morales, thank you for the super chat. She says, have you seen the Asian murder hornets now is that what Pitsu was going up against?
Oh, was that big thing? I don't know if that was a murder hornet.
The hell out of me.
Our dog last night, there was some kind of, I don't know if it was a mosquito or was like a wasp.
No, if it was a mosquito, I think it was a wasp. Been doing that.
But Pitsu jumped on it. And
yeah, we were sitting there, and all of a sudden he jumps off the bed, and I was like, "What the hell is he doing?" And he goes over in the corner, and I hear Jamal say, "You're gonna fuck around and get stung." So Jamal popped up and grabbed something and had to grab it. But I have not seen the Asian hornet. I don't know. I hope that's not what my dog child was playing with this morning. We have a couple things in the yard that do attract stinging type bugs, and the big one likes to chase them and bite at them, and hopefully whatever that is not going to hurt my little 4-legged fur babies. Paleo Leftist, thank you for the super chat. He says, how crazy is it when Yumi Hogan, First Lady of Maryland, has to get 500,000 tests from South Korea?
Yes.
State now guards stockpile with force.
Yes.
Against Trump.
Have you seen that?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that a lot. So what you're talking about, Paleo Leftist, I think what you're talking about is local governments are buying PPE, protective equipment, personal protective equipment, to protect people from the virus, and they are hiding those purchases from the federal government.
with using the state troopers, police, National Guard, or not National Guard, but the troops in that particular area. They're concerned that Trump would steal it. Hospitals themselves have had to do that stuff. They stole it.
Didn't
multiple
the federal government
supplies. One of the hospitals, the guy who's the administrator, he started to try to get all of these devices and services and stuff from these other countries. He gets into the country, and federal marshals
confiscate it.
And Trump has been doing this. And so it's like these guys, the governors, have just said, fuck it, I'm going to do it. And she brought it into BWI, Maryland, and had cops surrounding that particular thing. And so they got it and took it to a secure location, hiding it in order to distribute it. Do you know how weird that is?
That's fucked up.
Well, I mean, it's fucked up on 2 counts. Well, it's fucked up, A, that they have to do it. It's fucked up that there's no coordination at the top in order to do it themselves so they can distribute those things to the governors. It's fucked up that they didn't care enough about vaccines and masks and all of these other things because they weren't inexpensive, meaning they couldn't necessarily make a profit on those things, so we don't make those things. A lot of this stuff is fucked up all the way down the line. It's fucked up that they give people a $1,200 check that they don't necessarily, as opposed to keeping those people in the house for 3 months and just letting it pass and then restarting after. It's going to be fucked up to restart regardless.
This is, and I would like to have a specialist kind of talk about this because I don't fucking know. But the virus doesn't just pass.
Well, I mean, when I mean pass, I just mean.
No, I guess what I'm saying is when people are talking about it's been long enough, let's go out. Or I literally heard somebody say, yeah, it's all gone now.
No.
Where did it go?
No, I don't mean that way. It dies out. It's like flu season where at some point it goes away. I mean, the Spanish flu, we don't have the Spanish flu now.
Well, I'm hearing, I guess my question is between it just going away on its own, dying out, or whatever the terminology that you want to use, people are saying that it's still going to be spread, still going to be problematic until we have a vaccine.
Yes.
Which could be 6, 8, 12 months down the line, and we should still be isolating until we have the vaccine.
Maybe.
You know what I mean?
I don't know. I mean, it's because...
You don't know, or you don't know what I mean?
No. I'm saying I don't think that's right. Look, you can make an argument that people should be quarantined over, a month or two. When you get into 3-4 months, it gets dicey. I mean, yes, it's going to be dependent upon how bad the virus is. Meaning if the COVID-19 thing gets worse, then they're going to have to go through the similar process. Say, for instance, these governors start opening up and more people start getting infected, in which case it drives the number up to hospitals and everything else. Well, at that point, now you're in another situation where you have to put those people back in their houses. I don't think you necessarily need a vaccine if it dies out on its own. Like, for example, SARS. It died out. It wasn't something where people need to get vaccinated for. At some point, it just kind of ran its course. When you get a cold, sometimes it runs its course. So the flu. There are seasons for that stuff, but it doesn't necessarily stay around in perpetuity. I do know that they said the effects are going to be going on for a year or so. But I don't think you can keep people in the house for a year. Your economic model has to be able to support people's living standards in some way. Otherwise, you're going to put people in a huge amount of desperation, and those people are not necessarily going to take that kindly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel you, but if it dies out, then it's a non-factor. I look at this stuff in a particular way, and maybe my point of view is somewhat different. I've been sick for years. I've had my kidney failure started when I was 17, and I'm 42 now. I've been doing this longer than pretty much anybody that I know at either of my facilities.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, at either of my facilities. Yeah, right. And so for me, after you go through 10 years of feeling fucking miserable, you have 2 surgeries each year, you're stuck with a certain degree of limitation. Meaning, people are different. And for me, limitation is not necessarily something I like all that much. And there was always a push against those limitations. Sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't work. As I got older, I got better at negotiating that. But you learn a certain degree of patience when dealing with stuff that you don't necessarily plan. Shit happens. I mean, and society has taken this kind of weird approach of yeah, fuck that. I don't want to be stuck in the house. Some of that has to do with not having cash. Some of these people are maniacs. Some of these people are just Trump supporters. Some of these people are being pushed by the political process. Yeah. But whatever their reasoning is, they're going to get people killed. It's problematic that the society can't say, okay, here's a real thing, a virus. And our economic model doesn't allow us to accommodate this virus. Well, there's something wrong with your economic model.
Right.
Because the virus is what it is, and there will always be pandemics that take place. If your system, political and economic, can't negotiate that, there's something wrong with your system. That's all.
All right, wait.
Go for
2
it.
super chats before we go on. Also, while I'm reading these, can you double check the title of this video?
Yeah,
Because
it's called Bernie Sanders ran a miserable campaign. Joe Biden is a flagrant liar. You're stuck with Biden.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ben Radley, thank you for the super chat. Ben says, think about democracy from a business perspective. A vote equals transaction of political currency.
Yes.
You can spend it where you see fit.
Yes.
That is correct. Hey, Pat, Constitution Journal said, I added you both on Instagram unless they're fan accounts.
No, those are mine. That's
They're
mine.
real.
All right, so speaking of protests, I got a lot of feedback on this tweet. Most of it was like, yeah, that's right. And a few people were like, hey, man, stop race baiting. It's like, it's not race baiting if it just so happens to be true. This is a protest. I think this is in California, but I'm not sure. But watch, all of these people are white. I think there's a black woman way in the back somewhere. But look at how they interact with the cops and look at how the cops interact with them. All right, let's watch.
Slammer on the ground. Hey, they're not getting punched in the face? I like it.
Just so you notice, they don't have on masks. They're screaming in the cop's face. They're putting their hands on these cops. That person has a sign that says vaccines call Caesar. That person is an anti-vaxxer. The person in the back says stop tyranny. These people just needed to stay the fuck home for like 2 months. And they can't process a world where something happens that intervenes in their typical life, their petty dramas. And so they act like this. It's as if they don't understand that real things happen sometimes, that you just have to accommodate. But I'm pointing at these cops. They're just standing there. They're getting abused by these people, and the cops are not reacting. That's astonishing. Look at this. This looks like a European country. Now, what I said after I watched that, I said, white privilege is a motherfucker. And people were like, yeah, pretty much. Now, the reason they say pretty much is because imagine for the moment that all of these people were African Americans. Now, I already know the answer to that because Ronald Reagan banned, he banned guns or assault weapons or something after African Americans were planning a protest march with armed protest march. You've had people raid the Capitol building, I think it was in Michigan, with weapons, trying to essentially, take the building through force. And the cops, nobody got shot, nobody got tased, nobody got hit, nobody got punched. These cops are getting abused. This cop get pulled back. Look at this guy. He's getting pulled back. That was his foot. What if they were black? And be honest. Let's be very honest. Now, as African American, I would tell you that the overwhelming majority of black people would say, that's amazing. I can't believe none of those people got hit, tased, or abused.
I will tell you, as someone who's been an African American their entire life, living in the good old America for all of my 35 years on this planet, ain't no way in hell that would have been me.
What did Black Lives Matter encounter? Do you remember that?
I don't know
those,
anyone else
and all this other stuff?
personally.
And they would call this
who
a protest.
Would go
they call it blacks
and do that and would feel safe
doing that,
putting themselves out there, being that aggressive towards the police.
I mean, look at this. This is astonishing to me. I remember Laura Steiner. She went after a cop on one of her videos, and the cop was like, Laura, she was in the cop's face. She was going at him. And the cop was like, ma'am, if you keep doing this, I'm going to take you in. And she was like, fine, arrest me. And he walked her out the building. But I was like, Lauren, you're going to get tased. No, I was like, I can't believe you did that. Like, I don't know any black person that would behave this way. I mean, it's one thing if somebody gets shot or something and people flip out. But the way that they respond to us versus some shit like this, which is violent and aggressive, they just stand there. We're all in the same tribe. No issue.
Not to mention, like you pointed out, I saw one person with a mask on. So
Yeah.
all the foodies that are being
All right, your rights don't end where your fear begins. So my rights don't end where your fear begins.
All right, before we go, I want to bring these
Do
comments
you
in.
know how stupid that is? Wait, just for a moment. Think of what that means. Can I build a nuclear weapon in my house? Okay, maybe that's extreme. Can I get a rocket launcher and just keep it in my backyard? Can I walk around with a bazooka? Now, why do we frown upon certain weapons over other weapons? Well, we don't want those weapons to be used on a domestic front. And so they say, yeah, that's probably a bad weapon to have. There's nothing that you're going to do with that particular weapon. That weapon is designed to kill people. So let's not necessarily let that person have that particular weapon. Now, you could say fear is a part of that process. We're terrified that that weapon is going to be used on human beings, but the weapon is supposed to be used on human beings. And so you don't necessarily need it. If a person has, let's say, some disease or some kind of virus, well, that person can make somebody else ill. Meaning, this is not, I'm scared of something that is not real. It's, I'm scared of something that actually is real, because there's a lot of us that's been killed by this particular virus. And so this notion that your rights, my rights don't end where your fear begins, actually sometimes they do. Because sometimes my fear is absolutely legitimate.
Justified.
Yes. In the case of saying we need to bring down the numbers, and the way we bring down the numbers is to distance ourselves.
All right, there's a lot of talk about this.
Go for it.
There's some
disagreements?
Well,
yeah, let's go for it.
But some of them are kind of stupid.
Go for
Constitution Journal said, she did say something else. Said, if they were black, they would be dead.
Yes.
Black Leadership Analysis, thank you guys for the super chat, said, black love, black politics, I love y'all. Thank you for the support. Philip Zimmerman says, honestly, it's because we use the Second Amendment. Talking about the people who are protesting and why they can get away with it. I don't care what I use. I don't know if I'm African American. Yeah. Let's just go through the comments and then we'll come back and kind of comment on them. Ben Riley said, I literally thought the same thing. The Proud Boys wouldn't have had any traction if they were black. Cannabis Sativa says, Maine has, oh my goodness. Maine has ranked choice voting. They have a shot at having a DSA or Green Party U.S. senator. Progressives should take over there and focus on local races. Maybe I don't need to read. I'm losing my mind.
Just to make a certain point real quick. Right here. All right, so Ronald, named after Republican Assemblyman Don Mufford and signed into law by then Governor of California Ronald Reagan, the bill was crafted in response to members of the Black Panther Party who was lawfully conducting armed patrols of Oakland neighborhoods in what would later be termed cop watching. Now, understand what he did. He passed the bill to basically, it was some kind of firearms act. But he did that because he didn't like those African Americans walking around with guns legally. This was a Republican that did not care about the Second Amendment. He cared more about those African Americans with those guns. Okay. That's my point. And this is kind of why I say this. We can't get away with this. At least I don't think so.
No. Let me, I want to bring these in. Okay.
Go ahead.
Luther de Papier says, what if they were black? Yeah, we're not suicidal enough to test that theory.
Right.
That's it. And then Pat, come on, man, you're killing me. Pat says, if we're not black, we shouldn't speak out. What the fuck, Jamal? That's not what's being said.
I didn't say that at all.
Somebody also said, so does this mean that we're pro-cop? You're fucking missing the point altogether. The point is, yes, you should speak out. But if I spoke out the way that they're speaking out, would the police have behaved the same way?
That's
probably not. That is the point that we're trying to say. They have the right to protest however they want to.
Yes.
What we are trying to draw attention to, or I think what Jamal is having the conversation about, is
I
the
want to
response
protest that way
to this
also. That's my point.
From the police. We as blacks cannot do that.
These cops are basically doing a pretty decent job managing a protest.
Right.
That's what's going on. Now, I'm making the point that I would like when me and people who look like me engage the cops.
In the same way.
They give us the same benefit of the doubt.
It doesn't happen.
As opposed to getting tased, shot, choked, or just
Now let me.
I was terrified. He ran for he ran.
Now, this is my anime boo, so no disrespect, Philip, but you are way off. Philip says, I love you both, but blacks are too peaceful. We are too peaceful because we get killed for nothing. A lot of times, I could lay down on the ground or put my hands up and I still get shot.
Why do you think that? Why do you think that's there?
For self-preservation.
I mean, right. I mean, think of the history of this country for the moment. I mean, be honest about the history of this country. Think of how many black leaders were shot in the 60s and 70s, where these guys were being taken out. Martin Luther King, taken out. Malcolm X, taken out. Medgar Evers, taken out. I mean, you can go down the list. And even if you're going to make the argument like Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, like, there were so many assassinations that were taking place in the United States, especially in the African American community. You had Klansmen who were basically fascists, taking people out and hanging them. It's for the same reason that blacks vote Democrat. Like, it's a cultural, historical thing that kind of just stays there because it's within almost like a cultural memory of the people who are there. You have the Black Lives Matter movement that some people try to malign, but you had groups like the Black Panther Party that Reagan went after the moment they were trying to lawfully guarding their neighborhoods from cops who were essentially beating those people. I'm just making a very basic point. This is not pro-cop nonsense. You must see my other videos. I'm making the point that in the way that these guys are protesting, I and people who look like me see this as being astonishing that the cops are just standing there taking the abuse. Because I don't think that they will stand there and take the abuse if they look like us. That's my only basic point. I want to be able to protest with this much vigor without fear of the cop tasing, shooting, or choking me. That's all. I think it's a basic point. Now, some people may disagree with that, but keep in mind what you're disagreeing with is basically my argument of if they were black, these cops wouldn't have behaved this way.
Backchop makes a good point. He says how the media would cover it would be completely different as well.
A riot. Oh, it's a riot.
One of those person had an assault charge.
It's like those
10 years ago.
Right. Right. It would be completely different. So yeah, I don't want to hang out on too much on this, but I got so much feedback on that video. I was like,
wait, there's more comments. Ben
Riley
Riley says, black folks, we know we don't have the institutional advantages that allow us to infinitely to allow us to have to infinity stones to even attempt that bullshit. Remember Dave Chappelle said we make bad bargaining chips for a reason. Dare Me to Do It says Phil is right. White people will shoot anyone. The fear of violence yields respect. The path of least resistance will always be taken.
Yes, taken advantage of. That's right.
Showing love.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, the violence thing, I don't necessarily think you need violence to do it. I mean, I would say this. That professor under Obama that got dragged out of his house, Gates, Henry Gates, I think his name, where the cop attacked him, dragged him at his own front door, mind you, and took him to jail. Obama came out and said the cop acted stupidly. Then Obama immediately turned around after the Republicans were bellyaching about it and said, okay, let's have a beer summit. That's debasing your community to some degree that you effectively worked with, because the majority of us are not going to get a beer summit. You know what I mean? He took the guy from his actual door and dragged him out. He didn't get the benefit of the doubt like these people are getting the benefit of the doubt. The guy was a professor. This wasn't just some random guy. And even if it was a random guy, they should still get afforded a certain level of respect. Just as a person, for fuck's sake. I would love to be able to have that much vigor in a protest and have some trust that the cop is not a goddamn maniac.
All right, we have other super chats.
Out of me. Go for it.
Mega Morales.
Bam, nailed it.
Mega Morales, thank you for the super chat, says, BS, JB, Bernie Sanders. Who's JB? Joe Biden. Yep. Campaigns picking anti-Bernie folks over militant grassroots Sanders organizers as delegates. They are going through their social media accounts to see if they post any anti-Biden before picking them as a Sanders delegate. I'm not surprised.
It doesn't matter.
Megan Morales also says, have you seen Convo Couch video on how California Dems are decreasing the number of Bernie delegates against bylaws and doing the other one that I just talked about?
It doesn't matter. If Joe Biden takes it, it doesn't matter. It's a token.
All right, we have
How often have you known the Democratic Party to go by whatever platform they were using? It's a fig leaf. It doesn't, it's like, okay, Bernie Sanders get the minimum of delegates. Okay. And Bernie Sanders makes a minority argument for this or that. Okay, they may take it, they may not. At the end of the day, though, you lost. And any notion of political capital that you might have had, you gave away even before you started the race. And everything that you did, it reeked of weakness and inability to make the basic points that you needed to make. I firmly believe after this week that Bernie Sanders could have won this race. And that has made me so much more aggravated. It makes me so aggravated. Let's do one of our
Wait, we got
questions.
more super chats rolling in.
I'm sorry.
Charles Pereira says the U.S. left lost because you think race less important than class. If U.S. had only white, it would be a socialist utopia. Remember LBJ comments about this.
Wait, say that one more time. I might have missed it. Go ahead, say that one more time.
The U.S. left lost because you think race is less important than class. If U.S. had only white, it would be a socialist utopia.
Oh, I see. I know what you're saying.
Remember LBJ comments.
So it's the So there's this African Americans. I'll give you some inside baseball from the way I think we roundly think. Everybody's different, but we look at our political system and we ask ourselves, why the fuck are those white Republicans voting? Are those whites voting for Republicans? Because it doesn't make sense to us, especially if you're looking at like the 80s and 70s. Okay. Right, it becomes a class issue to us. And we think if your economic situation, just all of us are working and everything else, you would make the best choice for your own situation, even if that's with somebody else who you don't particularly like. Meaning you may not like me, but don't fuck me over economically, especially if both of us are in the same class.
Right.
But that's not the way it really broke down. It broke down on this notion, in some cases, of I don't want that person taking my money. Because I was able to benefit from this system, I got a certain advantage in the system, and I want to maintain my advantage. Now, the problem with that, of course, is pretty straightforward, because right now you have two basic class of people where one side is doing a hell of a lot better than the other because that one side had a hell of an advantage in regards to getting ahead. But they don't want to lose advantage. Nobody likes losing the advantages that they have. And so it creates a disparity.
One more.
Go for it.
Ben Riley, thank you for the super chat. This is the last one for
this.
Oh,
wait. I know what I was trying to say. The reason that they vote for him, the point that we make sometimes is they're voting for him for issues of race. Meaning it's not a class issue anymore. For the most part, they got what they want from the standpoint of taxes. They may be okay economically. And so less taxes sounds good to me. My money is, I'm already doing okay. Meaning if you have a large number of whites or an uneven distribution of cash in regards to whites and blacks, let's just say on average.
Right.
And it is. I think it was like 100,000 to like 20 or something. Then one class can actually vote Republican. And even though the Republicans are, because it benefits them. But you have another class of whites who are dirt poor. And it's like, why are you voting for that party when you need social benefits? You need healthcare. You need, expansion of Social Security and everything else. And they would say something like, well, I don't want those people getting my cash. Yeah. I don't want you to take my taxes in order to give to those darkies. Which, basically, you're fucking yourself over in order to fuck somebody else over. Your country could be radically different. Now, we on the left, he's right. We tend to focus on class. I tend to focus on class more than race. But his point is, there is a racial component to this for the reasons that people don't necessarily take on one political party versus the other. I agree to some degree. Clearly that's going to be the case in some cases. You're going to have a racist element of the party. Is what it is. Whatever that percentage is. But you have to, there's no way to deal with the race part. There's just not. I don't know how you deal with that.
Turn back time.
Right. The only thing you can really deal with is the class part. Between, it's almost like you have multiple variables, but the variable that you can negotiate is class. And in negotiating the class part, that person may hate my guts, but if I give him enough incentive to come over to my side on this particular issue, he may do that. You may hate me. You may say, I hate this person or that person. By the same token, you may also need health care. And the fact that you need health care may matter more to you than the fact that you hate me. Meaning, if you're pulling a policy agenda, there's no class or there's no party stigma to it. It's just, this is the issue that we're pushing for. And I don't really care what your political priorities are. I don't care if you're racist. I don't care if you're sexist. I don't care. Yeah. Because none of that stuff matters in the context of, are you for this issue or not? Which means I don't really even need to know you. You don't even need to like me. You just need to be able to, yes, I'm for Medicare for all, and stand with other millions of people saying, this is what I'm for, and I'm willing to vote for or against as a litmus test upon whether or not a candidate takes my agenda. That's the way you try to get things to change. And I think that's the way you try to pull people in. But again, that's a class argument. That's not a racial argument. But Oh, go ahead.
No,
I was
two more
going to do the
comments.
puffy thing.
Nope, not yet. Ben Riley says, I think every black man had their mama give them the talk, and we're not talking about the birds and the bees. That is correct. I have 3 older brothers and a husband. And I know that their mom, their dad, their parents sat them down and, talked about how to interact with police. I think that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Ben Riley, yes, he says, I was talking about
same thing.
cop race interactions. Exactly. Yeah. But sorry, Jamal, I think Bernie would win against the RNC. The DNC cheats too effectively against insurgents. # Nick Bronner.
I have to be honest, I'm not entirely sure that Sanders... Yeah, I have, my feelings for Sanders have gotten really dark. And I think it's because he could have... Look, Sanders could have won this. Let's go into this while we're here. And yeah, my feelings for Sanders have gotten somewhat dark. If I'm going to run for president, and I'm going to use this revolutionary talk, and you have a lot of people who are completely disaffected in the political process. I've talked to people who will say, look, I don't want to hear about the politics stuff. And I say, I know, but the person is actually authentic and they're pushing for it. Look, they don't do anything for you, so I don't really care. It doesn't change. It doesn't matter. Meaning you have 50% of the population that doesn't vote, and a large share of that part is just disaffected with the process. It gets less and less and less year after year after year because people get that much more fed up with it. You have the majority of the people who at this point say they're not either part of the party, even though they may vote with one party or the other, but the fact that they don't identify themselves as a member of the party itself, again, is somewhat of a dark mark against what the parties are doing. They are not representing the interests of the public. So if you, Bernie Sanders, are going to run as something different, then you need to be something different. And you need to be able to pursue your case or a case that basically wins. Meaning the first argument that you make is your stump speech, but you've only made that stump speech. Meaning over and over and over again, regardless of what was taking place, you consistently make the stump speech. By the time you get to Iowa and you win Iowa, you should have been going into somewhat of a different campaign of information, opposition research to bury Joe Biden. You would never do it. This is what I mean. Like, some of this stuff was a political fight. This is not... When Joe Biden was winning in those other states, remember, after South Carolina, or before South Carolina, by the time it hit Nevada, they were thinking, oh my God, Sanders is just going to run away with it. And I was screaming, you got to take South Carolina. You got to take South Carolina. Right. And my thought was, you got to do everything in your powers to take South Carolina, or at the very least stop him at South Carolina. Because if he takes South Carolina, it changes the dynamic from the thing of Sanders has won all of these states to, oh wow, Joe Biden has won South Carolina. And if it's by a huge margin, immediately all of these people that thought Biden was unelectable, all of a sudden, bam, he's back electable again. Almost overnight. It wasn't anything that Joe Biden did. He just won it by large margins. The media props him up. So instead of the media ever hitting Biden, criticizing Biden, or anything else, for the most part, the criticisms will be on Sanders, I think Warren, but not Biden. They allow Biden to escape on all sorts of opposition research. But who is supposed to put that opposition research out? Sanders. It's his job.
Up to you.
And he wasn't doing it. He wasn't doing it. He forbid his people from actually putting out that level of opposition research. When Joe Biden lied about Social Security, when Joe Biden lied about South Africa, when Joe Biden lied about his Iraq war vote, he'd point out that Joe Biden lied about the Iraq vote. He would point out the Social Security thing. But those aren't the most damning attacks for somebody like Joe Biden, especially now in the middle of the Reid story. Think for the moment of the situation that we're in. Bernie Sanders decided to run a lackluster, basically unenthusiastic campaign. Meaning, yes, he was able to get the youth vote. Yes, he was doing a revolutionary talk. But the talk didn't correspond to what he was doing and the way that he was pursuing his campaign. If you are screaming for a revolution, what does that mean? That's that same euphoric rhetoric of Obama, right? And he's saying, I want a political revolution. Great. What are you going to do about that? Yeah. What are you going to do? How are you going to use your leverage? How are you going to lose all of these millions of people that are behind you to get the policy agenda that you want to accomplish? You don't. You didn't at all. You gave your leverage away from day one. Yes, I'll vote for any random Democrat. And those same random Democrats that you said you'd vote for and you'd back regardless, those same Democrats were willing to go to a brokered convention and rip that nomination out your hands. That's like...
Yeah. Look,
Joe Biden, when Sanders was in, let's say, Iowa, and they get into the fight on Social Security, the way he should have pursued the campaign is this way, because I think this would have won. But Sanders didn't run any of these videos because Sanders didn't want to touch this particular topic. Trump will be running videos like this, and Trump will be eating him alive by it. Sanders, all right, so, is that right? Yeah, all right, so these two. Wait a minute.
Do you want me to go into the other one?
Well, let's do Puff Daddy first.
Okay, let me read this.
Puff Daddy. Go for it.
All right, so Jarrett Watson, thank you for the topic suggestion. Also, we're about at 200 people. Make sure if you're enjoying the video and the chat that you give the video a thumbs up. Hit the like button down below so that YouTube lets more people know that we are live. And also just a quick reminder that today is Contributor Appreciation. And so this is the weekly show where Jamal takes out to talk about what you specifically request. With that in mind, we go to the Patreon platform where the patron Jarrett Watson says he wants you to talk about why the black vote is free. Diddy, P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, Puff Diddy, whatever, got it wrong, though I wish he were right. Just like with Jim Clyburn and Roland Martin, black people are being led in the wrong direction. They give the suggestion, but what they want, do they really have to do anything you ask for after the fact? Demands must be made beforehand. So let's listen to what he's talking about, because apparently
Puff doesn't know what he's talking
about. Puff Daddy, who I don't really care about,
yeah.
It's his opinion.
Let's go for it.
The black
African. All right, Puff.
vote is not going to be for free. We're going to have to see some promises. You know, what are we getting in return for our vote? Nothing has changed for Black America. And in order for us to vote for Biden, we can't be taken for granted like we always are because we're supposed to be Democrats or because people are afraid of Trump. It's whoever's going to take care of our community, whoever wants to make a deal. It's business at this point. You know, we can't trust politicians, so we want to know very clearly, just like Trump made it clear that he wanted to build a wall. Biden needs to make it clear that he's going to change the lives and quality of life of black and brown people, or else he can't get the vote. I will hold the vote hostage if I have to.
You said it here, said it first.
Breaking news.
So, yes and no. Puff has no political power to implement that. Look,
well, I don't think he's talking about implementing. He said he's holding his vote.
Yeah, but he's doing a video, so he's putting that out there for other African Americans to basically hold their vote. But what are you holding your vote for? How many of you are going to hold your vote? This is kind of my point when I'm saying the solidarity of no. He's not entirely wrong, but he's wrong on this notion of Joe Biden is going to do X or Y. You need to have some level of political leverage to get them to do anything. For example, this is nonsense politics on MSNBC. Take a listen to her argument, and I'm going to explain why this argument, A, doesn't make sense, and why Puff Daddy is not going to get what he wants, but how Puff can join me and millions of others in actually trying to get what we want. But you got to be able to state what those demands are.
Yes, I think he needs to choose an African-American woman. Black women are the base of the Democratic Party. We showed that again and again. We showed it again in South Carolina, just like all those other times. So he should pick a black woman and demonstrate that he understands this particular moment and our electoral power.
Now, her point is, look, African Americans have been getting Joe Biden and Democrats elected for years. That's the most active component of the base. That's basically what Puff is saying. Mm-hmm. And he was like, look, you know, we've been getting you guys elected. You guys got to get something back. Now, the problem with this is Obama, black, gave 95% of the wealth to the top 1%. Now, that was a Democrat. That was a black Democrat. His race in no way stopped him from doing that. Meaning the issue in this case is class. It's not race. You could put anybody in that spot that's black. Who gives a shit about the color? It's more about whether or not the person is going to do the job and what they're going to do in the capacity of that job. So this notion of just giving somebody, a black woman, that particular job just because she's a black woman, A, it's kind of demeaning if you're being honest. But also, it's not that I don't want a black woman in that spot. Yes.
I don't get, what are her policies?
Right.
Just because she's black doesn't mean that's the right person right there. If she's black, we deserve somebody that's black. No, we deserve somebody that has the policies. Is a person going to push for Medicare for all? Right. Is a person going to, make sure that the Social Security thing gets raised so people can have a decent standard of living as they get older? Like, what is the person going to do? Get rid of college debt? Like, what is their priorities? That's the thing that matters. Right. If you're talking about something that is going to ameliorate the hard edges of our system, it's that, not the race of the person. Right. Having a black VP, this popped up. Deborah Williams says having a black VP means nothing but symbolism. Yeah, that's all it is. Right. Now, if there is a black candidate Nina Turner that has the beliefs that are in line with mine, they're perfect. That's awesome. That's awesome. But if there is a white candidate that has a better platform, I'm going with that. A better record, and their policies are more in line with what I want to see in that office, then I'm not going to vote for the black person just because they are black. I got a couple of super chats that I want to get into before you go on to the next one. Just real quick from the last conversation talking about race. Fed Up Woman says, I remember getting pulled over and the officer took my black boyfriend's license and he was the passenger. Totally ignored me and left afterwards.
Wow.
Ben Riley says, I think Bernie is too Vulcan. Picard in is Kantian ethics and not enough like Kirk or Garrick. Even so, he always loses.
He always loses because he never tries. I mean, what do I mean by that? Well, let's finish the black thing up first.
Okay, well, I got one more. While we're talking about that and P. Diddy's comment, Ben Riley says, I also find the evangelical Christians in Southern black churches are manipulated just as easy, in my opinion.
They are. The black misleadership class, as Glenn Ford calls them. Look, the reason that politics is wrong and that Puff Daddy and the way that he's thinking about this is wrong is because in order to do the quote-unquote hold your vote hostage, you have to make it very clear what you want. Meaning, I am pushing for Medicare for all. That's the thing that I want. I want them to get rid of student debt. That's the thing that I want. That's my litmus test. If you want my support, that's what you get. Now, this is not based on party. And that's what needs to be understood. If the Democratic Party loses, if the Republican Party loses, they lost. That has nothing to do with me. In the context of whether I'm one or the other, I am neither. I am pushing for these policies, and if you accept these policies, you get my support. If you don't accept them, I will work against you. That's where you need to be. And you need to be with that to a certain degree of unison. If you want to get Medicare for all passed, if you want to get Social Security passed, it's not going to be through the Hail Mary of Bernie Sanders. It is going to be through people all across the country getting together and pushing for those things, being willing to say, you're not getting my support. And the very fact, even though you lost, the capacity of being able to make them lose is a power in and of itself. That's the leverage that you're looking for, Puff. The leverage that you're looking for is not, I'm just going to hold my vote as an individual. It has to be a collective will where the political space is pressed on heavily in order to do X or Y, and you have the capacity to make them lose if they don't. That's all it is. Joe Biden right now is trying to figure out whether he wants to choose a black woman or whether he wants to choose a progressive. Now, those aren't necessarily mutually exclusive, but understand his reasoning. He's wondering whether he has a black vote locked up. And if he does have a black vote locked up, he'll go to the lefty. Right. Now, understand, the reason why he's saying the black vote locked up, because basically, if you're going to vote for Joe Biden to the tune of 90%, Joe Biden doesn't have to do anything for you because you're going to vote for Joe Biden. That argument of you have nowhere else to go has scared the shit out of the black community for so long, they just reflexively vote Democrat. Because they reflexively vote Democrat, Democrats have realized we don't need to offer anything in this process because you're already giving us your support. You've made no demands. You don't work as a collective. You just vote for us. And because you just vote for us, we will take advantage and kind of run with it. And that's what's continued, to happen. So until Puff can get other African Americans to not vote for Democrat just reflexively that way, and be willing to say, well, yeah, the Republican may lose, but we need to set a standard in regards to what we will accept or not accept. This notion that people are willing to accept one concentration camp less, or this guy had one less rape than the other guy. Think about what you're saying as a standard for your political process. You run initially with somebody, I don't know, Ronald Reagan, that has a certain, I suppose, dignity in the office. Yes, he started going mentally bad. No, he wasn't a great president, but it wasn't this notion of, they just keep getting worse. Like both candidates, year after year after year, because you have no accountability in the process. So as they give more and more money to the rich, as they give more and more money to these businesses, as they cut more and more services, we stand by and allow those Democrats to do that over and over and over again. Bill Clinton was going to privatize Social Security. He had already made the deal with Newt Gingrich. Bill Clinton, NAFTA. Bill Clinton, destabilization, Glass-Steagall. I guess I'm making the point that these were Democrats who would look at the left and say, you have nowhere else to go, and the left would say, okay. Meaning the left has just moved a standard in regards to what they're willing to support. And at no point has they willing to say, yeah, we're not backing that. You're going to lose if you do that. The left never does that. They're terrified of Republicans. You have these other people like Sam Cedar who would tell people, hey, you got to look at this election in this kind of narrow-focused pragmatism. But that's not really pragmatic at all. Yeah. If you decide, okay, my standards are going to get less and less and less, and every 4 years or every number of years, the candidate gets worse because my standards gets less and less and less. You realize if there's an incentive that pushes a candidate to the right, the candidate is going to go to the right if there's no countervailing when pushing it back. You have dollars or pitchforks. And in our situation, you have a lot of dollars. You have people who are disengaged from the political process, and you have candidates who effectively have stopped representing the people who put them in that office. They're only representing themselves and the 1%ers that are giving them tons of cash. I'm saying for that process to stop, you need to function en masse outside of the party structure, and you need to be able to press your agenda by being able to make one or the other lose if they don't toe your line. That's the way to get political clout. That's the way to get political power. And by the way, if you're looking to start a new party, that's the way to start a new party also. It allows an accretion disk of people who have similar mindset to kind of start organizing around the things that they want to see in the country. And the more you can grow that, and the more nebulous but organized that is, the better your impact. If you have something that starts off with 1 million and grows to, let's say, 10 million people who say, yeah, we want Medicare for all, and all of you in all of these various states have the capacity to make the Democratic Party lose if they don't toe that agenda, that level of organization can breed a party. That's the first point. But the second point, you've gained political leverage and political credibility by making them lose. You have no credibility in this process, Puff, because your group will always just vote reflexively Democrat. And until you engage that, nothing changes. I'm just saying, accountability has to be in the process.
Well, I just wanted to point out one thing that you keep saying over and over, holding your vote hostage.
Yeah.
Having someone or taking something or holding something hostage implies that you're keeping it because the other person wants it, and you're not giving it back until they give you something that you want. So just holding it
I see
hostage.
what you mean.
You know
You're
what
not
I
really
mean?
holding
Like,
it hostage. I mean, it's just your vote.
no, I guess what I'm saying is, yes, hold it hostage until they give you what you want.
Well, no.
Don't just hold it.
But hostage is like,
Once
I've taken something from you,
Right.
and I'm holding it. But
right, because
the
I want
Democratic
you
Party,
to give me something back in return.
But Puff considers himself a Democrat. So from Puff's standpoint, he's looking at it as the Democratic Party believes that my vote is owed to them because I'm a Democrat. And maybe so, if you're a Democrat, that's the impetus. And the groups that he functioned in and everything else.
You're missing the point I'm trying to make.
Well, but that's what he's doing. I'm just saying. The holding my vote hostage has a certain connotation to it. He's holding it hostage as if the Democratic Party is owed that vote. That's his point.
Okay, but
if I'm not a Democrat,
actually had a point. You're missing
go ahead. I'm sorry.
But that's okay.
I thought you
I
were
have super
saying
chats to
hold
get
your
to.
hostage.
Samantha Mosley says, "Get the super chat to 300 in donations and 200 likes. That would be nice.
That would be awesome.
But do not forget to hit the thumbs up button if you're enjoying the content. That helps out a lot." Dudist Priest says, Nina Turner supported for a People's Party yesterday.
Really?
It's Dudeist Jamal.
Very
That's what she
nice.
said, yeah.
Very nice.
Pensive TM says, unless you prove to the oligarchs that you will not vote for their puppets, you have no power.
You have no power in the process.
We're going to talk about this other thing next. What about Ventura Turner Green Party US? That's the next topic, so we'll hold off on that because I have another super chat that is related to this one. Okay. Before we go on, Broke College Graduate, thank you for the super chat says, just doing my part to show love to this platform that has truly pulled me into politics.
Thanks,
Thank
man.
you. Says, Aisha, you are truly beautiful, and I am trying to find my partner in politics now. Jamal, thank you for the show. Just to be clear, I am not his partner in politics. This is it. And if I could flip the politics switch off, like once I get up and go, that would be great. It's just like intermittently cut it back on. But
I don't have an intermittent switch.
that is not our strength. Wait. There was one more. Smart Dumb Guy says, thank you, Jamal. I hope you know what I mean, Thomas.
Thank you, Jamal. I hope you know what I mean, Thomas. Who said it?
Smart Dumb Guy.
Okay.
Yeah, because I say that a lot too, because he likes to give additional examples on things. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Imagine for the moment, all those phrases that give alternative examples. But to bring us to the next one very quickly, Deidre Hawkins says, please cover Jesse Ventura.
So Jesse Ventura was supposedly running, or considering running, let's say it that way, as a third-party candidate. Now, he was going to run, I think, under the Green Party, and because Jesse always chest thumps about, if I ran this race, I do this, and if I ran this race, I do that. So it looked, the last thing I saw, he was looking into some kind of inquiry into whether or not he was going to run. But I don't think he formally put it out there that he's running yet. He just was kind of teasing it. Look, I would love for Jesse to run. I'd vote for him in a heartbeat. Enthusiastically vote for him. There needs to be something else. And, the race that Sanders ran was so soft. For example, imagine for the moment Sanders gets to Iowa. At this point, Sanders has a certain momentum about it. He wins Iowa. He goes to New Hampshire. Now, while he's in Iowa, just before he hits Iowa, Biden comes out with a video on Social Security. Now, when Biden put his video on Social Security, Sanders ran his video showing Biden was lying about Social Security and even showed Biden, back during those days out and, speaking about, we need to cut Social Security and cut the budget and this type of stuff. But you should have also followed it up by this. Wait a minute. Where is it?
Marcus Roca says, Jamal, he is running. You heard it here first. Debate on the 5th Green Party, and Ventura is debating.
Who's he debating?
Marcos, who's he debating? Marcos also had something earlier that popped up, and I forgot to read this, saying he sent an email. He's trying to give you some kind of story. Just check your email for Marcos Roca. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Okay.
Marcos Roca. Smart Dumb Guy says, Michelle Obama as VP gets creepy. Joe, my vote. Michelle Obama as VP gets creepy. Joe, my vote. I don't see her doing that personally.
Well, some people have been asking for her to get into the campaign.
All right, wait.
I'm missing a video.
You're looking for something on Ventura?
No, it was another video that I had. Let me see. Yeah, let's look up Ventura. I didn't know Justin Ventura was running though. I mean, like I said, the last
Howie
time I saw, he was looking
and
at
them all. Howie?
All right,
Who's he debating?
Jesse Ventura.
He's debating Howie.
Oh, Howie Hawkins. Jesse Ventura weighing presidential run in the Green Party. Jesse Ventura joins Green Party from Minnesota. Okay, right here. Top of White House. Just days after publicly musing about a presidential run, a former Minnesota governor has taken another step towards tossing his hat in the ring. On Saturday, the Green Party of Minnesota announced its newest member, Jesse Ventura. Jesse Ventura. All right. The informal ceremony appears to have taken place in a public park in White Bear Lake. It comes nearly a week after Ventura posted a tweet saying, if you were to run for president, the Green Party would be my first choice. He also endorsed the party in April 27th.
Can you read his tweet? Can we see this on the screen?
Let's see the tweet. Let's see. Come on. There we are. Okay, I've decided I'm going to test the waters. I've decided I'm going to test the waters. If it was going to be for president, the Green Party would be my first choice. I've endorsed the party, and I am testing the waters. So Jesse Ventura, and I even shared that. So that was on my Twitter feed. Jesse Ventura is running for president of the United States, it looks like. So he posted a tweet hinting at the White House. Here's another tweet from Ventura. Jesse Ventura becomes a member of the Green Party Minnesota as co-chair. Trayman Cruz looks on. It's coming, Ventura. Honestly, God, man, can you imagine if Ventura is able to pull up like a real campaign? The problem is you got to be able to get on the debate stage. You have to have a certain degree of name recognition, especially if you're running in something like the Green Party. And you have to be able to have enough cash and enough support to get on the debate stage. Because that's where everything is made. They're rigging the rules, whether you believe it or not, or whether you realize it. By the Republican Party and the Democratic Party basically coming to terms on who's going to get on the debate stage, it excludes everybody else and makes it just better for their candidates. They have the media outfits, they have all that stuff, Fox News, MSNBC. So their candidates, just by definition of the way they promote their candidates, is going to get a huge amount of publicity. The Green Party has no such device for getting that information out. So whoever is running, if it's a Green Party or if it's independent, they need to have enough cash and enough ability to publicize themselves enough to be able to look as being a contender, if they can get on the debate stage. But again, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party rigged the rules for that debate stage. We used to have the women's, thing. It was a women's organization that used to run the debates. And at that point, it was just kind of a fair process where anybody can debate. So you can have Ralph Nader on the debate stage. You can have, Ross Perot, for example. But Ross Perot had tons of cash. Ross Perot got like 10 or 11% of the vote. And that was the largest independent run that I'm aware of. It might have been higher, but I guess I'm saying it's hard to do that. And so you need a certain gravitas to make it work.
Pensive Team says my Bernie vote would go, my Bernie money would go to Jesse
Me too.
And Nina.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
All right, so just real quick, because I am heading out because I got stuff going on. But I just wanted to say thank you for letting me hang out.
Of course.
And for all of your support.
And I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to end this, but I'm going to be back in a moment.
Okay, so we're going to end the contributor appreciation because these were the topics. So this is what I want to say before I leave. Don't forget, well, first of all, thank you for everybody who is part of the Patreon platform. It really does help. We've had a few new people come on in the last couple of weeks, so thank you for that. We don't shout out people individually because some people don't want their business out there. So we don't do that, but just a collective thank you. Because, Joe Smith might say, I don't want people to know.
Yeah.
Whatever. Don't put my name out there. So we don't do that. Smart Dumb Guy says, why are these so short? These are not usually short. Contributor appreciation historically lasts like 2 hours.
Yeah.
But it's short because of you. No, I'm just joking. Because we didn't have one, because I have somewhere else to go. And then two, there are no additional topic suggestions. Hint, hint, make sure that you submit those every week because we want to hear from you. This is the show where Jamal is going to talk about what you want to hear.
Yeah.
And so log in if you are a patron and give us your topic suggestions. Ben Riley says we should get Joe Rogan to live stream the debate.
Yes.
So do you want to just keep this live stream going?
No, I'm going to kill it and then I'm going to bring it back because I'm going to change the topic and all. Because we didn't get to the Sanders one. Not in real terms.
I know, but I guess what I'm saying is these people are already here. They're geared up. They're gassed up. You're going to end the stream and then wait for these people to join?
Right. Well, we need to cut it then.
I cut it.
Okay.
You need to cut it.
All right.
All right.
We'll keep this going.
So I'm going to go. Thank you guys for your love,
this
your
is an
support.
easy cut point.
And can you put something up so that I don't look crazy getting up from the desk and
so
leaving?
Donald Trump has been going after one Joe Biden.
Good.
And let's see. Maybe let's use this one. Yeah, Trump has been going after Joe Biden. Now, I've said before that they were going to weaponize this issue. And weaponize they did. Now, my thing was Sanders also should have weaponized this. And look, women are lining up. I trust Joe. I trust Joe. I trust Joe. Here's another one. Whitmer, governor of... Where's she from?
I don't know why.
I forget this... But I think this is Whitmer. I think this is either Michigan...
Compare that to 2008.
I think this is Michigan. Yeah, Michigan. Good. Bam. Nailed it.
18, when you said you believe Dr. Christine Blasey Ford after she accused now Justice Brett Kavanaugh of assault. Kavanaugh also, like Biden, categorically denied that accusation. And Blasey Ford, to be honest, she did not have the contemporaneous accounts of her view of what happened that Tara Reade does. You have spoken movingly about how you're a survivor of assault yourself. Why do you believe Biden and not Kavanaugh? Are they not both entitled to the same presumption of innocence, regardless of their political views?
You know, Jake, as a survivor and as a feminist, I'll say this. We need to give people an opportunity to tell their story. But then
Think about what she just said. He asked her a very basic question. I mean, basically the same question that they asked Joe Biden, or that Mika asked Joe Biden. Well, how could you believe Ford's account, but you're sketchy on Reed's account? How? Now, I give Jake Tapper credit for asking this question because many people wouldn't have asked the question. And for the longest time, media has been completely dodging this issue. I really wish this issue would have came up 3 months earlier, or 4 months earlier, and while Joe Biden was running, as opposed to them kind of doing a beauty pageant of an election. Like I said, this angers me towards Sanders to some degree because this is explosive. And this would have fundamentally ended Joe Biden's campaign. What do I mean by that? Walk with me for the moment. Well, before I get to that point, the video was effectively started off with that before we did patron appreciation. So that's the thing in my head. Whitmer here is basically saying, yes, I believed Ford. But no, I don't necessarily believe Tara. I believe Joe Biden. And then you ask the basic question, well, why do you believe one but not the other? Good question, Jake. She dodges this by basically throwing her sexual assault, setting it on fire, and dodging out the interview. Let's hear it again, because
we have
this question has nothing to do with her being sexually assaulted. This question has nothing to do with you being a feminist. This question has everything to do with why are you being a hypocrite here? And how are you using the factors that was in the Ford case that you thought Kavanaugh was guilty on versus this case where you believe that Joe Biden is entirely innocent? How? Your sexual assault. And as somebody who has also been sexually assaulted, I'm sorry. By the same token, it has nothing to do with it. Throwing it out here like this is shameful.
The contemporaneous accounts of her view of what happened that Tara Reade does. You have spoken movingly about how you're a survivor of assault yourself. Why do you believe Biden and not Kavanaugh? Are they not both entitled to the same presumption of innocence, regardless of their political views?
You know, Jake, as a survivor and as a feminist, I'll say this. we need to give people an opportunity to tell their story. But then we have a duty to vet it. And just because you're a survivor doesn't mean that every claim is equal. It means we give them the ability to make their case and the other side as well, and then to make a judgment that is informed. I have read a lot about this current allegation. I know Joe Biden, and I've watched his defense, and there's not a pattern that goes into this. And I think that for these reasons, I'm very comfortable that Joe Biden is who he says he is. He's and you know what? And that's all I'm going to say about it. I really resent the fact that every time a case comes up, all of us survivors have to weigh in. It is.
This has nothing to do with the price of tea in China. Just nothing. I mean, basically, look, if somebody's throwing their assault in a way like this for a question that really didn't have anything to do with the assault, they are dodging. She's dodging this question and basically saying, yes, I'm backing Joe Biden. The problem is, and the one question that she doesn't answer and that she uses this in order to dodge so that she doesn't get asked that question is what factors in the Ford case that you believe that you don't necessarily believe in this very specific case. If there's a pattern of abuse, well, there have been multiple women who said Joe Biden either touched them inappropriately, smelled their hair, and in this case, an assault. So what's the pattern that you're looking for in regards to Biden where you say this guy is innocent, at least from the way that you're looking at this? She said, that's all I'm going to say about it. Because, again, the question that hurts and the question that bites, that gets to the level of hypocrisy that is going on here is, why did you believe that Brett Kavanaugh was fundamentally guilty, but you believe Joe Biden is fundamentally innocent? The level of hypocrisy here is amazing. He's not trotting you out because you're a sexual survivor. They've had Nancy Pelosi out. They had pretty much everybody. There was Axel Warren. All of these people got started to get asked this very specific question. They asked every Democrat in the Senate, and all of them, for the most part, didn't want to have anything to say about it. This went on for months. So, let's pipe down a little bit on the rage and indignation about them bringing a survivor on. It's not, that's not the principal reason you're on. You're governor. And as a governor, even a VP pick. And so that VP pick has a certain point of view of the world where Reed is just not telling the truth. That's unfortunate. I mean, the Democratic Party is basically setting Me Too on fire in order to get Joe Biden over the finish line. And that was just one horrid case. They've been attacking that woman relentlessly. My burn will go to Nina. Yes, same here. We should get Joe Rogan to do live stream. I agree with you. There was one from Pensive. Let's see. Where is it? Pensive. Here we go. I'm patron TMW. Just saying. Pensive TMW. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Pizza TM. Pensive TM. And I appreciate you for being a patron, man. That's why we do this show. The show is, I try to orient the show around what the public wants in regards to content. And I add in the things that I kind of want to talk about also. So it's kind of a mix of both. But I was going to do this show separate, but I'll do this show now since it's in my mind. Let's say I'm in Sanders' camp. Sanders is listening to me. And I am giving him information on how I think he needs to run the campaign. And I am kicked out for being a radical thinker in regards to how he should pursue his course, and we disagree on potential of the level of vitriol that's necessary in order to win, especially in tying Biden with pretty much the Democratic establishment, especially since those things are not necessarily liked. Your appeal was that you were something different. And if you're going to be something different and they're going to call you a radical, be that radical. You can either accept it or not. Accepting it, though, makes you or puts you in a position where you have some degree of power and leverage because they realize that you are not necessarily one of them and you won't necessarily toe the line. The problem is that is not what took place. He was willing to toe the line. He was willing to stay in certain boundaries and lines. And the fact that he was willing to stay in those boundaries and lines effectively allowed Joe Biden to win. If you're going to win this race, you can't necessarily run the race in the way that the people who have established the race want you to run that race. To start the race and saying, I will support any random candidate, they don't ask any of the other candidates that. They always ask you that. That's very specific to you. At one point, Sanders gets mad at somebody and says, why are you always asking me this question? Well, they know that basically your supporters are not fans of the Democratic Party. And a large share of those supporters wouldn't necessarily vote Democrat regardless of what you do. On the other side, before I even go into the main point, Sanders, in the way that he ran the race, say for the moment you landed on the planet And that planet was being subjugated by some alien force that basically took control of the people on the planet. The planet was thriving, but the people didn't have free will on that particular planet. And you make your argument that, hey, that's wrong. You shouldn't be taking these people apart like this. These people need to have liberty, and they need to be able to do whatever they want to do. They need to be alive and free. And you're able to free that group from that alien control. And that group immediately starts a civil war where half of the population gets nuked and killed by this kind of war between the various places. Is that a fuck up, or should you leave it alone? Just because you take an action doesn't necessarily mean the action is going to be good. And you can take actions with all the best intentions in the world that turn to shit. Basically, it boils down to what is your objective and what are you trying to do to accomplish that objective. That pretty much was basically everything boils down to. This notion of choice. When Sanders decided to run this race, how are you going to run it? Are you going to run it as radical, where you're going to use your political leverage and this revolution, as you call it, in order to put pressure on the political space to get your agenda accomplished? Or are you going to play their game? And in playing their game, being willing to basically sell out your base for this particular party, doing the worst case scenario. Because fact is, if Sanders wanted to stop Trump and he wanted to prevent Trump from taking office, then Joe Biden would uniquely weak against Trump. All of the corruption, all of the failure, all of the lying, Joe Biden is emblematic of all of that. And so you've created a situation where, because you didn't run a decent competitive race, you've now allowed Joe Biden to skate without having opposition research loaded against him. You were the best chance against Trump, but you weren't willing to do what you needed to do in order to win this race. That's one of the saddest aspects of this, because whatever Sanders thought was right, this kind of narrow-focused pragmatism of, well, I don't want to do anything to injure the candidate, so I'm not going to run in a way that is going to actually hurt the candidate. That's not how you win a race. That you can't win a race that way. The notion that you're going to run a race where you're not going to try to injure your opponent is utter nonsense. There are multiple tools that you have at your disposal to go at your opponent. This is not a situation where you let the guy skate, especially if your goal is to try to change the United States. That is not a job for weak men. That is a job for somebody who can get it done. Unfortunately, Sanders couldn't get it done. And because he couldn't get it done, whatever his political ideology is that kept him in certain restraints, or whatever his allegiance to that kept him in certain restraints, he was allowed, Joe Biden, to potentially stumble over the finish line with a sexual allegation hanging over his head, weak policy positions, no enthusiasm, less cash. This is not necessarily a recipe for doing well. Not to mention these allegations are credible. Because Sanders didn't put this opposition research out, because he didn't attack Joe Biden, because he didn't check whether or not Biden has a glass jaw, Biden may actually stumble over the finish line without being gut checked, without having this information injected into the political process. What if this took place months ago? What if Sanders brought this up, but not bring it up in this kind of aggressive way, but bring it up in an electability way? How are you electable when you have stuff like this hanging over your head? You're going to be strangled with this particular information, because that argument would have been right. This is utterly atrocious. It is going to drive down the vote tally. You're going to have a lot of independents. You're going to have a lot of people who may be Democrat, but might have had some level of sexual assault, that don't buy the hypocrisy that they're seeing here with the Democratic Party, where all of them are lining up against the victim. Credible victim with multiple corroborating evidence. And all of them have lined up. All of these women have said, yeah, fuck me too. I'm backing Joe Biden. There will be political consequences for that. Mark my words, that will suppress the vote. That's all you need to do. Pretend for the moment we're in Iowa. Sanders is running his race. Joe Biden is relatively close. And then they go from New Biden to Hampshire and Nevada. By the time Joe Biden and Sanders gets in Iowa, Sanders has established somewhat of a lead in that state. In establishing somewhat of a lead in that state, Joe Biden comes out with an argument for Social Security, if I'm not mistaken, and Sanders counterattacks with his argument about Social Security. South Carolina was always looked at in the long view because South Carolina was coming up in a few months. But your candidate has just been caught in a lie. Basically, one of your weapons is that you try to be honest and authentic. And so if you try to be honest and authentic, why can't you contrast your honesty with the fact that that guy just lied? Your political campaign should have told you immediately, look, we have opposition research that can attack Joe Biden on this very point of lying and make the point that the president shouldn't be a replica of Donald Trump. You also need to make the argument about electability, saying this guy is unelectable. Hillary Clinton lost. Al Gore lost. John Kerry lost. Joe Biden is the same person, just like them. He's unelectable. The moment that he lies about Social Security, a video just like this should have come out from the Sanders campaign with some sticky thing at the end saying, paid by Sanders.
Explaining to do. The new questions stem from taped remarks of Biden during an April campaign appearance in New Hampshire.
I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. Went back to law school and, in fact, ended up in the top half of my class. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only needed 123 credits.
Biden now concedes he did not graduate in the top half of his law school class, that he does not have 3 degrees from college, and that he was not named outstanding political science student in college.
Newsweek says Biden actually went to school on a half scholarship, ended up near the bottom of his class, and won only 1 degree, not 3.
Joe Biden ranked 76th in a class of 85 at the University of Syracuse Law School. I mean, this guy comes off this whole thing as a flyweight.
Now Biden says Newsweek is right. His memory had failed him.
Joseph Biden explaining to do.
His memory failed him. His memory failed him. He dropped out the race. He had to drop out the race. But think about, do you honestly believe that Joe Biden's memory failed him? Or do you think Joe Biden just lied? And a flagrant Donald Trump-esque lie. What, back in the 80s or 90s, whenever that was. The moment that you show a pattern that even back in the 80s he had dropped out the race because of the lying, well, it makes the Social Security thing in context of that history, not necessarily the history dealing with Obama. You always have to also keep South Carolina in mind, making this argument that Joe Biden is a liar. Just like Obama was saying Hillary Clinton will say anything they need to do to get elected. And you play that video, you play this video of Joe Biden talking about Social Security, and you add this to it. Joe Biden talking about civil rights.
You know, when I was a teenager in Delaware, for real, I got involved in the civil rights movement. We have the 8th largest black population in America. Most people don't know that. And I'd go to 8 o'clock Mass, then I'd go to Reverend Herring's church where we'd meet in order to organize and figure where we were going to go, whether we were going to desegregate the Rialto movie theater or what we were going to do. I got my education for real in the black church. And that's not hyperbole, it's a fact. But I got my education, Reverend Doc, in the black church. Not a joke. Because when we used to get organized on Sundays to go out and desegregate movie theaters and things like that, we'd do it through the black church. I was no big shakes, Reverend, in the civil rights movement. I was just a kid. I got involved in desegregated movie theaters and helping, you may remember Reverend Moyer in Delaware and Herman Holloway organized voter registration drives, coming out of black churches on Sundays, figuring how we were going to move. In October, I was invited to the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis to receive the Freedom Award, a thing when I sat in black churches in East Side. During the 60s, I was.
Now, you saw Joe Biden go from church to church to church, looking one black person in the face after the next, and saying that I was involved in the civil rights movement. I was doing this. I was doing that. I was active. I was in those black churches. I got my education in those black churches. And Joe Biden would shake hands, glad hand, stiff hair, all of these people in all of these churches, making it look like I'm the guy for the black vote. I'm the guy for the black vote. This is the guy that was a large proponent of the crime bill. This is the guy who had a son that was on crack and yet was pushing other people in prison for years, ruining lives and this stuff. This was the guy that wanted to cut Social Security. This is the guy that wanted to have a balanced budget amendment. That is some Republican shit, by the way. I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that Joe Biden has a horrible history on this stuff, but he's able to shape a narrative around himself as if I was the guy that was working in the civil rights movement. Why is he doing that? Because the civil rights movement, to some degree, is a sacred thing. It's not something you could put your hands on, per se, but it is something that took place where there was a change in stature or a change in perspective over the course of time in regards to the way we interact with each other, as opposed to having subordinate classes or whatnot. It's, I guess you can say, less defined, even though it's still there. That's besides the point. Joe Biden is shaping an image around himself that's just fundamentally false. Now, if you are running a campaign and one candidate says they, was supporting Social Security, and you catch them in a lie and you show, I caught him in a lie about Social Security, then you need to continue to pursue that case of this guy just lies. And every time Joe Biden lies, you should put a video out saying he's lying and create a resonance around the fact that this guy doesn't tell the truth. Now, when you're creating this argument that he doesn't tell the truth and that Joe Biden is somewhat of a liar, those things are think of them as political weapons to kind of cut into the opponent. It's not necessarily a winning shot. The winning shot doesn't come in until later. Keep in mind, South Carolina. You play that video of Joe Biden going to those churches, and then play this.
During the 60s, I was, in fact, very concerned about the civil rights movement. I was not an activist. I worked at an all-black swimming pool in the east side of Wilmington, Delaware. I was involved in what they were thinking, what they were feeling. I was involved, but I was not out marching. I was not down in Selma. I was not anywhere else. I was a suburbanite kid who got a dose of exposure to what was happening to black Americans when I'm in my own city.
Understand what I just showed you. Understand what I just showed you. Joe Biden lies about Social Security, gets caught. Joe Biden lies about the Iraq vote, gets caught. Joe Biden lies about civil rights. Sanders never brings it up. Nina Turner tries to bring it up, and Sanders wouldn't allow her to do so. Even Sirota, when he tried to bring this up, wouldn't allow him to do so. One of the other surrogates for Sanders actually had this video and put this video out, and Sanders would never run this video. Now, you're going into South Carolina where Joe Biden is trying to make this appearance that he's the black vote. I got the black vote. That may be true, but if you're starting to run videos, especially going from New Hampshire, going into Nevada, going into South Carolina, and many of the other states, those videos should have been making this very specific point that this guy can't be trusted. He is lying to you. He's lying to you about the civil rights thing. I'm the guy that was out there with King. This guy was not. And you press that issue home. If they boo you, who cares? It doesn't matter. You weren't going to get the vote anyway. You're trying to get the people who realize, oh, he's trying to pull the wool over our eyes. He's taking something sacred and is using that sacred thing for political expedience. You just need to carve out a certain section of the vote in order to win. And making the point that Joe Biden is lying about civil rights is one of the ways to do it, especially for the younger crowd. You were getting the younger demographic anyway, but you would have got those numbers a bit higher. And I honestly think people who might have been a part of the civil rights movement would have taken great issue with finding out that Joe Biden was lying this flagrantly in this way. Mainstream media has all these videos. They just didn't play these videos. You keep making the argument the guy is a liar. This part. Then you have Tara Reade. Because the catch here is the moment that the Tara Reade argument comes out, or the moment that you find access to it, then the argument changes and it goes into this guy's unelectable. You can't have a situation where he's going to go into the race and he has a rape allegation hanging over his head. The guy's unelectable. Meaning your argument is going to grow and flow as you're going through the various states. But the key resonance that you kind of want to hit off early on is Joe Biden is unelectable. He is uniquely unelectable against Trump. Al Gore lost. John Kerry lost. Hillary Clinton lost. He's the same type of character that lost. And you hit electability like your life depended on it. Because it does, especially in the political space. When Joe Biden started losing the electability argument, you had a situation where African Americans started to shift in their support. Why? Because the black vote is who can keep the monsters at bay. And if they believe that Sanders can keep the monsters at bay, they would go with Sanders and they would enjoy those particular policies. If they don't believe that they can sell Sanders to the rest of the nation, they would go with Joe Biden. By the same token, you can have other stimulus in order to try to push people in one direction or the other, and getting across that that person was lying about Social Security is problematic. I mean, lying about civil rights is problematic, to say the least. Also, you have these videos now where Joe Biden is being asked now about a rape allegation. Now, think about this for the moment of a campaign. You were able to expose Joe Biden lying. You were able to expose the history of Joe Biden lying. You were able to show videos of Joe Biden lying in this campaign. And after all of those videos showing Joe Biden being a flagrant liar, you then show this, or some element of this. Him being asked by Mika about the rape allegations with Tara Reade. And immediately after that, you change your argument to, look, I don't know whether Joe Biden did it or not. I'm not going to take a position on that. What I will say is I implicitly believe women in this process. And Joe Biden needs to step out the race and deal with his affairs. That's what I would say. I would say I have more delegates. I am resuming my campaign, and I'm going to win this thing. But at this point, it's too late. This is something that should have taken place months ago. If these allegations, and Sanders found these allegations at any point, be it 4 months ago, 5 months ago, these allegations should have been part of the attack going against Joe Biden. Not directly, more so in this argument that you can't run a race with a sexual allegation hanging over your head. And the party of Me Too cannot have a candidate who basically is the antithesis of Me Too. That's the argument that you start to make on this. The argument changes to one of electability. But the electability argument goes into this guy being somewhat of a liar, which makes this case that much worse for Joe Biden when he has to deal with these type of questions. Yes, it's smash mouth politics. There was no way to know that this would come up. But if you're making the case that Joe Biden is a liar, the moment that something like this pops up, it's something that you use politically for your ends. You're trying to win. This should have taken place months ago. Did Sanders not know this? Did Sanders not know the other videos existed? Did Sanders not want to have the conversation on civil rights? How do you expect to win the race if you can't necessarily get the black vote and you don't make an overt play for the black vote? Understand, Joe Biden didn't have infrastructure in many of those states. When Joe Biden was limping into Nevada, people were even asking the question, is Joe Biden even going to be able to make it in the race? When Sanders won Nevada, South Carolina, the polls moved in his direction a little bit more. And it had started to close in regards to the space between the two, a release in the polling itself. The problem becomes, though, if you can't wedge away Joe Biden's main constituencies, you're going to lose. He's the establishment's choice. He's only establishment's choice just because he was able to sop up the black vote. And if Biden wasn't there, Sanders probably would have sopped it up in spades. When all of those Democrats lined up together behind Joe Biden, when Elizabeth Warren stayed in the race on Super Tuesday using the Super PAC, the party effectively was working to A, split the vote on one side, and B, shift all of the support to Biden on the other. And that's basically what took place. But pretend for the moment, if Sanders was running this race where it was somewhat smash mouth politics, where he's making this argument about Biden being a liar and everything else, he gets Biden to have to come out of the shadows to make this particular argument. It looks worse for Biden in this case to continue to run the race with a rape allegation hanging over your head. That's all. And if you're the Democratic Party, this is the worst case scenario for you, being the party of Me Too like a year ago, and now saying, yeah, fuck Me Too. That sounds funny. But you get my point. You get my point. This is Joe Biden trying to answer about the charges of assault.
Why not approve a search of her name in those records?
Approve a search of her name?
Yes, and reveal anything that might be related to Tara Reade in the University of Delaware records.
There is nothing. They wouldn't. They're not there. And if it's, I don't understand the point you're trying to make.
The point
there
I'm trying to make is
there are no personnel records by
are,
definition.
The point I'm trying to make is that you are approving and actually calling for a search of the National Archives records of anything pertaining to Tara Reade. I'm asking why not do the same in the University of Delaware records, which have raised questions because they were supposed to be revealed to the public and then they were sealed for a longer period of time. Why not do it for both sets of records?
Because the material in the University of Delaware has no personnel files, but it does have a lot of confidential conversations that I had with the president about a particular issue, that I had with the heads of state of other places, that would not be something that would be revealed while I was in public office or while I was seeking public office. It just stands to reason, to the best of my knowledge, no one else has done that either.
I'm just talking about her name, not anybody else in those records. A search for that. Nothing classified with the president or anybody else. I'm just asking, why not do a search for Tara Reade's name in the university?
That was a no. He's like, I'm not going to do that. And then he has that weird thing of, that looks bad. That looks bad. You thought Hillary Clinton running on an indictment was bad, under a potential indictment. That looks bad. Whatever you want to say about Tara Reade, and people have been attacking her relentlessly, the moment that it became politically disadvantageous, all of these guys flipped and jumped basically on Team Biden. And they had a lot of women that have been tried out here basically saying, I believe Biden, I don't believe Tara Reade. Even though they weren't necessarily there, they couldn't necessarily see what took place. They don't care about the corroborating evidence behind her story, and they're looking for anything that they can to hold on to say, I trust Biden. Lisa Bloom was more honest about this and basically said, Tara Reade, I do believe you, but Trump, I got to take out Trump, and Biden is our guy. But the problem here that Democrats, I don't think, fully appreciate is that just because they're willing to be okay with Biden running with a rape charge over his head, a lot of people will not be. And the suppression of the vote because of such, be it from independents and maybe even from some Democrats, I don't know how Biden wins under a model like this. By the same token, the coronavirus could change it up where Trump gets a lot of people killed, especially when trying to push these people back to work, because they don't want to basically ensure that the public welfare is taken care of. Not to mention, owner class is pushing these guys to get them back to do their jobs. I mean, this is a devastating series of arguments that should have been made by the Sanders camp. I mean, this is just opposition research and the way that opposition research works when you're trying to get this stuff in the media and talked about. The moment that you make this argument that Biden has a history of lying, which he does, he has a history of plagiarism also. He lost and dropped out of campaigns because of those things. And you tie that to this one, meaning this is the same Joe Biden that lied back then, this is the same Joe Biden that is lying now. You make the point about South Africa, you make a video on that. You make videos, you make arguments that pertain to this particular person and the weaknesses of that person. And in this case, Joe Biden's strongest point was electability, and that should have been the point that you should have been hitting like nobody's business. The moment this came out, the argument should have changed to Joe Biden is unelectable because we don't know how this is going to turn out, and the last thing we want is somebody like this running for president with a charge over his head like this. It's not that they can prosecute Joe Biden. It's nothing like that. It's more so that it's extremely disadvantageous for a candidate to run in a situation like that. Some people are going to inherently say, the woman, I believe her, he's guilty. He was in a powerful position. He was able to basically take what he wanted and didn't have consequences for it. They're going to look at the cooperating evidence and say, we believe her. Which means a lot of people are going to have somewhat of a headwind going and vote for somebody who they think is a rapist. That's all I mean. It's a difficult road. It's not so much that I can say that Sanders would have clear-cut, absolutely 1,000% win under that model. That could have cheated him either way. I guess I'm making the point, though, that it's a difference between running an assertive campaign where you're trying to actually take down a system as opposed to running a campaign where you're running within the lines that the system wants you to run. Those videos and Joe Biden's past should have been made part of the issue, and they weren't. Having an argument entirely about issues when you need other items and you need other things to kind of pull from that candidate doesn't get your vote. Yes, they may like what you say, but they're still sticking with Biden. You need to unwedge them from their support from Biden. And at no point was Sanders willing to do that. At no point was he willing to tie Joe Biden to the Democratic Party and this kind of corrupt system, even though the argument that he's making inherently has Joe Biden and the Democratic Party part of a corrupt system. All of these things were problematic. He didn't have the capacity to go after his opponents in a way of this revolutionary talk. He was always limited in his abilities to get the stuff across. And basically his best case was Warren. Right now, he's working to help Warren become VP. At least that's what I think. That's my hypothesis. Warren has showed up with Elizabeth Warren has shown up with Joe Biden, with Sanders, I think it was Jay Paul. I think he's trying to give her this notion of credibility from the standpoint of the left. And he's doing so with this implicit association. So him or AOC and Warren would get together. Warren is considered, or AOC is considered a star in the progressive circles. Sanders and Warren get together. Bernie Sanders was still considered a star in progressive circles. I think their goal is to try to do this kind of amending of the left, and then trying to amend the left to try to make an argument for Warren for the vice presidential spot. Of all of the candidates, Sanders became number one for VP. Let's take Sanders off. Warren was the second choice. Or so you could say Warren was the first choice among the women in this case. And so there's political pressure for Joe Biden to either pick Warren or not pick Warren. You have people who want to give Joe Biden money saying don't pick Warren. You have people who are on lefty circles saying pick Warren. The argument from the left, I think, is basically you need to be able to get the progressive vote, so you need to put Warren in the VP spot. I think Warren will be neutered in that spot. I don't necessarily care who gets in that spot for Joe Biden. And if it's Warren, I will actively campaign against that campaign. Warren has created so much bad blood in the progressive circles, the notion that they're willing to associate with her after the way she ran that race. Do you know, at the end of that race, where Sanders and all these other people got out the race and backed Joe Biden, Sanders was shocked that Warren didn't endorse him. You were shocked. He didn't watch my channel. He didn't watch my channel. How naive. You ran a race, and a person who's running in the race with you is aping you, sapping your support away, and you don't do anything about the fact that she's aping you and sapping your support away. Warren collapsed on her own steam. She lied, got caught in that lie, and fell apart. Lying on a campaign is a big deal, especially if the public is going to be scrutinizing you. If you can make the case that the guy has a history of lying and is still currently lying, it damages a campaign. But this is not the way Sanders wanted to run. Look at this other case. Bloomberg. Mika kept asking Joe Biden, well, why don't you just release the records? We just need transparency. Why don't you release the records? How is that different from this? Meaning, pretend for the moment that Bloomberg is Joe Biden.
Critical of Mayor Bloomberg on this issue. Yes, I have, and I hope you heard what his defense was. I've been nice to some women. That just doesn't cut it. The mayor has to stand on his record, and what we need to know is exactly what's lurking out there. He has gotten some number of women, dozens, who knows, to sign non-disclosure agreements, both for sexual harassment and for gender discrimination.
Now, Warren here is making the argument that all of these things are floating around this guy. How can you trust this guy to run for office? We don't want a situation where your candidate has a rape or sexual abuse allegation hanging over his head the moment that he gets into the general election. That's where we are. Now, no, they haven't necessarily nominated Joe Biden yet. Joe Biden still haven't got the requisite number of votes. Apparently, he just won Kansas. But it's going to be Biden. Can you conceive of a situation where they take Joe Biden out of that spot? I can't. The problem is, if you get rid of Joe Biden, who's going to be Joe Biden's number two? And Joe Biden's number two, especially from the standpoint of the Democratic Party, is not going to be Bernie Sanders, even though from a delegate standpoint, it should be Sanders. Now, lefties who might have been cowed into the party to vote for Joe Biden are going to reject that choice. Meaning whoever they put in that particular spot, lefties are going to reject that choice because they want that choice to be Sanders. So the Democratic Party is stuck to some degree with just dealing with Joe Biden. It just basically makes in charge that I believe Joe Biden and just staying on that. That's staying on message. I believe Biden. I believe Biden. Whether they believe Biden or not, this is certainly a problematic position for them. Here's the catch. If Joe Biden is running this race, and if this race gets to the point where they actually get out of the primary and he gets into the general election, look, I'm just going to say this is problematic, extremely problematic. And Sanders should have been using this in the race, and he never did. It bugs me to no end, because I feel like this was an opportunity to actually get something real accomplished in the political space. I know some people are trying to figure out where do they go, and Sanders is going to be sheepdogging for the Democratic Party. Every stage that he goes on and does that, he should be booed for that. The path is not to just sheepdog people into the party. I am even questioning on whether or not Sanders ran a real campaign. I mean, I think he's authentic. I think he's earnest, but it was so flagrantly mal-run or misrun. And so I'm stuck with this position of, well, wait a minute. Was it always going to be this sheepdog thing where people were going to be pushed into the Democratic Party at the end of the race? And his goal in that was to basically collect these people and then try to give those people over to whatever candidate wins. So he didn't necessarily want to go after Joe Biden in any real way. Look, I'm not going to go with the conspiratorial route that it's set up that way. But whether it's set up that way or not, that's basically the way that it's functioning. Sanders, at this point, is not being helpful to this process. If you are really going to try to get Medicare for all accomplished, if you're really going to try to get expansion of Social Security and getting rid of college debt accomplished, you can get those things accomplished in the context of a movement. This argument for a political revolution should have been very specific demands that these are the things that we want. The fact that Sanders wasn't able to get the presidency should have in no way hindered or stopped that particular movement, because that particular movement should not be connected to a political party. It needs to be something separate and distinct where all of these people get together in the millions and say, this is what we want. And we have enough strength in this process to make you lose. That's just the negotiation in that point. They want your vote. You have that vote to give. You have the vote to give in millions. And having that vote, you have the capacity to ensure that they lose that race. In which case, you have some level of political leverage to inflict your agenda into the process. You can never do that, however, if you always acquiesce. The argument that the black vote is given for free is absolutely true. But the black vote is given for free because the blacks give their vote for free. That's not the problem of the Democratic Party. That's your problem. You do that. That's nobody else forcing you to do that. You do that. There are two parties, yes, but you do have the ability to abdicate. You're just so terrified of Republicans getting in office that you don't care who the Democrat is. But understand, that means that there are no standards in this process. Yes, the guy is accused of rape. Yes, I believe the person who accused him. However, I need to get Trump out of office. This is a political issue, so rape is not a barrier for my vote. Is that really where you want to go as a party? Fair question, right? Is that really where you want to go as a party? A lower and lower bar. A lower and lower bar. All right. I'm going to end this. We've gone for 2 hours and I am sweating. Nathan Drake, your vote has no leverage. Actually, your vote does have leverage. You just need to use it collectively. If I start a group, and the group is called Medicare for All, and that group has one goal, one objective. We want Medicare for all, period. You get our votes when you push that agenda. Ben Rowley, Tara's getting death threats now. Yeah, I saw that. I mean, what they're doing to her is horrendous. It really is. They've been attacking her. They've been calling her names. They've been saying they don't believe her. And now at this point, somebody published or doxed her, and now they're going after her. Bernie 2016 would have beaten Bernie 2020. Who, aware Bernie was infected with Trump bad rhetoric, was the crack in the foundation Jeff Weaver may sabotage? I heard about this. So Jeff Weaver has started a super PAC. And that super PAC basically is by Weaver, Rocha, and it was some other people that were part of Sanders' coalition. Now, Sanders has nothing to do with this. But Sanders has been using his email list to basically try to get money for the Democratic Party. I find that to be a betrayal, an utter, outright betrayal. I don't want you sending me emails for a party that I revile. I was only going to vote for you. Everybody else that was not going to get my vote. If Jesse Ventura runs, Jesse Ventura will get my vote, hands down. I would enthusiastically vote for Jesse Ventura. I'm just making the very basic point that he lost, but he lost on his own merits. He lost because he didn't run an actual real race. And after not winning a real race, now he's sheepdogging. My argument is that we stand collected under one banner of solidarity for an issue. If that issue is Medicare for all, you stand by that. And your opinion and your vote is always connected to that specific issue. And you vote en masse. You have people who do this for abortions. Well, what about doing it for healthcare? I don't care if you're a Republican. I don't care if you're independent. I don't care what you are. I don't even know your political designation. I don't even need to care what your political designation is. You end up in a situation where, do you agree with me for Medicare for all, yes or no? And if you say yes, right here, you're standing right beside me. If you could get 10 million people doing that, all of these people saying, yes, we believe in Medicare for all, and our vote is tethered to that very specific thing. You get our vote or you don't, based on that. And we will make you lose if you don't vote our way. Well, the Democratic Party is either going to burn after something like that, if they don't necessarily want to give concessions, or they're going to change. There are no two ways about it. But that's somewhat of a brutal course, but that is the course of action that needs to be taken. It needs to be taken on all of these issues. You can say, tie 3 issues together. Get millions of people behind those 3 issues. Unconnected from the political party. That's the important point that needs to be understood. Whether or not the Democratic Party loses has nothing to do with you. And because it has nothing to do with you, your issue is, this is my policy. Accept it or not. You don't accept it, you don't get my vote. Period. All of these chatter and everything else. And at the end of that process, when Biden loses or whatever other candidate loses that is not willing to toe the line on these particular issues, you accept that they lost. Yes, they lost because they weren't necessarily listening to us and didn't want to make concessions. They cared more about not giving concessions as opposed to beating Trump. And so they lost. Yes, we absolutely did that. And we would do that again. We would continue to do that if you continue to put up candidates we don't particularly like. One or two things is going to happen. Either the Democratic Party, well, 3. It either burns, it either changes, or something else started to form around that particular issue where that organization that is pushing for Medicare for all becomes somewhat of a party. I strongly believe that the way to create a new party is not something that can just be magically done. It has to be done in this kind of grassroots organizing way where it grows when you get a huge number of people that start to support your specific issue. The party thing fucks up the process. Because whether you're a Democrat or Republican, there's so much baggage associated with those names that you have some people that are immediately polarized the moment that you're associated with one or the other. The way to go about it is not to be associated with either and be associated with the issue that you want to see in the world. Start there. And the moment that you start there, you get a large number of people around you that says, yes, we should have health care. Everybody should have health care. It's insane. It's immoral that this country, the richest country on the planet, can't have things that European countries have. No, it needs to change. We need Medicare for all. And when they come and ask you for your vote, your basic question, are you supporting Medicare for all, yes or no? And everybody within the organization gets contacted and says, this guy supports it, this guy doesn't. And you pursue your political affairs with a very specific, very pointed interest. You get that issue accomplished through that means. Yes, there may be somebody in the political space that would help you the moment that they want to get that support and that vote from you. But until you get to the point where you disengage yourself from the political parties and start focusing on the issues in specific terms, nothing will get done. Your pathway is a solidarity under the banner of no and under a banner of this is what we want regarding policy. That's the way forward. The other stuff, the acquiescing to the party and everything else, that has no way of getting anything accomplished. If you're going to give them your vote immediately, there is no leverage in that process. When blacks are arguing, oh, Democrats take us for granted. Yes, they do, because it's a rational choice to take you for granted. If you're going to vote for them to the tune of 90%, then your vote is already there. They don't need to do anything else. They have all of these things pulling on them. All of these people want something for their particular support. And if they don't have to give you anything, they're not going to give you anything. And so they don't. The argument that, oh, blacks got Joe Biden elected doesn't matter. It's a moot point. In fact, that very specific argument makes it that much more plain that you don't need to do anything for that group. That's politics. I'm sorry. It's not about being nice. It's not about being pleasant. It's about what do you have leverage in the political process to pull off. That leverage could be money. That leverage could be support. You have people or pitchforks. Dollars or pitchforks. Ben Riley, Weaver, it's a fake. It's a fake. Star Trek. That's Star Trek trivia with a Romulan hit Cisco. It's like, it's a fake. Didn't you say 75% of burners were Biden? Yeah, in one of the other polls. But I've seen another poll from Emerson that goes with a different value. Now, the poll from Emerson, I hope that value is true. If Twitter will show me my... Yeah, I hope this poll from Emerson is true, because if this poll from Emerson is true, this is the beginning of something fucking amazing in regards to what we could potentially do in policy. My thing is, if Joe Biden wins, this may be a controversial opinion, but Joe Biden winning is the worst thing in the world for the left. It just is. If you can have two status quo candidates fail, it creates an existential crisis in regards to the people in the party and who's running that party. From the standpoint of having Clinton lose, Clinton might be able to blame the Russians, but the reality of it is she just lost. She didn't even go to Wisconsin. Now you have this election where, let's say, a dumber version of Clinton loses again. Well, at that point, there's another existential crisis in the party. If Joe Biden wins, however, Joe Biden, for the most part, is just going to do whatever Joe Biden does. However, Joe Biden lasts in that office, the vice president will probably need to be available in order to help out because Joe Biden is not altogether there. But understand what that means. That means the status quo candidate was able to take out the regular candidate that's president, that's in the office now. That is not a good position from the left. From the standpoint of the left, especially if you're trying to get your policy agenda accomplished, pressure after they won doesn't matter. If Joe Biden wins and Joe Biden privatizes Social Security and you get the election in 2024, people will still say, hey, I know we privatized Social Security, but the Ted Cruz is a monster. I guarantee you they would say it. There's no standards. You should have standards in your political process. If you don't have standards and you are associating yourself with the election, you can get into this kind of narrow focused pragmatism where you would look at a specific race as if that's the only thing that matters. These races take place over the context of time. 4 years, 4 years, 4 years, 4 years. And if you look over the context of time, that's the only way you can get an honest appraisal of what's taking place politically, not narrowly defined within a race. If you are part of a party and you're a part where you believe that people should have health care, and you believe in expansion of Social Security, and the party is entirely against that, why are you voting for a party that is entirely against your interests? And why do you ever believe that you're going to get your interests suited if you're always willing to give your support to the party for other reasons that don't necessarily go to the policy priorities? Your way of doing this is pulling out of the political system and focus on that particular movement and use that movement to press on these various places of being able to inflict losses. Hopefully that will become something else. I don't know another way forward. Sanders is not the way forward. From the standpoint of organization, it needs to be done across the country. So here's the Emerson poll. Now, this could be great. How likely are Sanders supporters to consider backing independent or third-party candidates? Very likely, 21.9%. Somewhat likely, 29.1%. Somewhat unlikely, 11%. Very unlikely, 14%. No chance, 23.6%. But look at that. If Jesse Ventura runs, Jesse Ventura are probably going to get those votes. He's probably going to get those votes. Like I said, he'd get mine in a heartbeat if he was running for the Green Party. Whether he wins or not is irrelevant to me. What I want is for lefties to be able to realize that you've been cowed for the last 40 years. That you've been hit with this argument of you have nowhere else to go, you have nowhere else to go. And the Democratic Party and the third wave Democrats that for the most part got rid of the New Deal Democrats that actually did try to attend to the needs and civil rights and economic justice and those type of things. Well, at the point where your standards eroded, where you could put somebody in like Clinton or put somebody in like Obama or put somebody in like John Kerry, well, there are no standards at that point. Meaning whatever the party was supposed to represent in regards to being the left-leaning party in the country and ameliorating the hard edges of our capitalistic system, that bar got moved back further and further and further because those people kept looking at elections as one singular thing as opposed to looking at the trend of where the country is going. As the country, or as the Democratic Party started taking massive amounts of cash, they started to get more corporate in their perspective. This kind of corporate class where both of these guys are captured by the same interests. The problem here is that the Democratic Party philosophically wasn't supposed to be that way. And because it wasn't supposed to be that way, you have this weird situation where both parties don't really bring up economics. They just use these kind of cultural issues or identity issues in order to kind of put these petty dramas up between people as opposed to dealing with real economic concerns. There are people living on your streets. How is that not news? How is that not a big deal? Why do you want people living on your streets? Is that not a health issue? Is that not a human rights issue? Don't the government have a mandate to provide for the general welfare? Don't those people need a certain degree of general welfare and making sure that they have somewhere to stay, somewhere to live, something to eat, or basic minimum existence? I guess I'm saying, from my standpoint, as a Sanders supporter, Joe Biden would never get my vote. He just wouldn't. And it goes beyond the rapist thing. He doesn't represent my interests any more than the Republican Party represents my interests. I am not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I am neither. And because I am neither, I vote based on whether or not my policy prescription gets passed. Yes, that's litmus tests, but litmus tests are standards. You go from Clinton, who gets rid of Glass-Steagall, who destroys the Telecommunications Act, who destroys welfare as we know it, who passes a crime bill, and the left accepts that. You have nowhere else to go. They accept it. Obama gives 95% of the income gains to the top 1%, and lefties accept that. I'm making the point to you that why are you accepting that? And if you continuously get cowed into accepting that, whether you're black, whether you're Hispanic, whether you're poor or anything else, if you're cowed into accepting that particular argument that Republicans are worse, and because the Republicans are worse, they're going to reflexively vote Democrat, they are least worse. Understand the least worse argument is relative. Both parties can continuously get progressively worse. And yes, you would end up in another election inevitably, where you would end up with the whole thing of least worse again, missing the point that at this point, they've gotten far, far worse. The issue is over time. It is prudent at times for a party to lose an election if that party is going beyond standards that the people within that party set. Meaning if that party members or all of the people who are in the party say, yeah, we should have Medicare for all, and you have an overwhelming majority, then those people should not vote for that particular candidate if that candidate is not going to toe that line or that agenda. Until you get to that point where his ability to even get elected is entirely dependent upon whether or not you support them, even if you're a minority partner in that particular exchange, you still to some degree have influence on the political system that you can leverage. That takes numbers, that takes people not identifying with the party structure and being outside of the party structure and willing to focus and fight for very specific demands and to get those demands implemented in a political space. If you get millions of people standing around you with the same idea and willing to organize and congregate, you can get change. I don't think it's an impossible thing. And seeing this number warms my heart like nobody else. Because my hope is that these people either vote third party in mass I want them to vote it en masse. Third party. We need something else. There are problems with the Green Party because it's the Green Party. People think it's overly environmental. If Jesse can somehow change that perspective of it, he may have a chance to get something done in the race. I think he would have a better chance than Jill Stein. The catch is, can he get on the debate stage? That's going to be the catch. Jesse Ventura has a certain degree of popularity right off the bat. So we'll see. But that's an interesting choice for the Green Party. I like it. But I really hope this number is right. I'm telling you, Sanders is leading you astray on this. You should not be helping Warren. In politics, there is something to say about political grudges. They're real, and they should be real. There should be consequences for bad behavior when they're engaging you. If Warren is going to be in the race, she's going to split the vote. She's going to work with the Democratic Party in order to shirk Sanders out of that particular win. When all of them line up, she stays there in order to screw him in the various states. Well, if she's going to do that, she's actively working against you, and there's no reason to believe that she's not behind the scenes working with the Democratic Party with this kind of idea of stop Sanders. I would likely believe that all of them were functioning in that same way. When they got to the point where they said, how many of you would go to a broker convention to rip this election out of Sanders' hands, every last one of them raised their hands, which means that all of them perfectly understood that it was better to lose to Trump as opposed to Sanders taking it, because if they would have taken it from Sanders, there's nobody who they could have put up that would have won. This is the party who you're going against, meaning your tactics need to be to some degree similar and it needs to adapt. And adapting is not necessarily towing the line in regards to any random Democrat. This guy has cognitive malfunctions. He can't even get out a speech. Now he's being accused of a rape charge. He's a flagrant liar. And this is the guy who they're putting up for the Democratic Party when the party, meaning the base of the party, has moved significantly to the left. If you're willing to accept somebody like this, even though that person doesn't accept your own policy proposals, or for that matter, the popular proposals that people put out, that means the Democratic Party is not willing to concede anything to get your support. And if you accept that, you've basically set a basic level of unaccountability where they don't have to give you anything. The you have nowhere else to go argument needs to be buried. And that door needs to be walked through if anything is ever going to change. The way you get change is not support. The way you get change is being strong in a demand and stand with that demand, whether that's civil rights, whether that's workers' rights, whether that's human rights, whatever that is. Specific demand and go with it full force with a large number of people pushing for those demands and organizing around those demands. Hopefully, a neural center or something would organize, just kind of happen when these people are getting together and trying to make their case. But it needs to be done in mass. When those youth groups gave Joe Biden that ultimatum, and it's like, well, it's not an ultimatum if you don't have anything backing it. If that youth group in the Sunshine Movement and all those other groups told Joe Biden, we have $100 million and we will actively work against you if you don't toe X or Y, then it's not a demand. It's only a suggestion. And if you're going to help Joe Biden anyway to get elected, it's just a suggestion. If Sanders is going to run in the race and say, you're going to get my support regardless, and I'm going to back the candidate enthusiastically, whoever that candidate is, you have no leverage in the process. You've just told them they can do anything to you, and you would basically give over your support. When Sanders was dealing with Warren, and Warren did everything in her power to hurt him in that race, he at one point was like, maybe she's not as progressive as I thought. Maybe she's not as progressive as I thought. No shit, Sanders. Why are you that naive in that process? But the catch here is the fact that she didn't support you, the fact that she didn't get out the race and give you an endorsement, the fact she got out the race and attacked you after she got out the race in order to make it that much worse. The woman thing, as if you were somehow telling her, or you were somehow implicitly sexist because you told her that a woman couldn't win, and you made the point that I didn't say that, but they act like you were lying about that. I guess I'm making the point that Warren in this race did some nefarious shit in this race towards Sanders, and especially against the left. She was not chosen by the left, even though she was grifting for votes and support on the left. She gets out the race and then starts attacking the guy that the left actually end up choosing. Why are you helping her do anything? Why? If your name is Sanders, you shouldn't have anything to do with Warren. She should be frozen out. She should be frozen out because basically she fucked us over big time. From the standpoint of Warren, AOC, Warren, Sanders, Warren, Jayapal, this may be their way of trying to rehabilitate her image from the standpoint of the base. And in trying to rehabilitate her image, pressing Joe Biden in some way of saying, look, you need to get the lefty vote, so you need to get this person. I don't know if that works. Warren has created a lot of bad blood. But who knows? She may still have this perspective of being a lefty at some point. And that's all Joe Biden wants, the perspective of being a lefty. The vice presidential spot Who knows? I'm leaning towards this notion that they're probably going to go with Warren. But I could be wrong. But he also already has the black vote locked up. So I don't think he needs that one. 51% of Sanders supporters are likely to consider voting for a third or independent party. I love that. Now, all I'm asking is get together. Like, if you guys are going to do that en masse. God, I don't know how to organize for stuff like that. And I don't even think I would have time either way. I have 2 jobs and treatments. But organize. If you're going to stand like that, and you're going to stand in this kind of solidarity of no, it doesn't matter if you vote for a third party in that case. I'm perfectly fine with that. But it needs to be very clear of what you want for the reasons that you are not going to vote and endorse and back X or Y. That's what I'm saying. That's why I say that's important. It's a demand. It's a clear demand of this is what we want. And it creates this kind of organizational force where you can press and use leverage on the political system. Without those groupings, it becomes these kind of wildcats just not voting. But it's not specific enough in order to kind of make any kind of change or have any kind of pressure on the process. So yeah, it's one of the polls said 75% of burners were going to go for Biden, but this one is saying something different. There were different polling companies. Also, it's possible that this was taken after the allegations came out. That's also possible. Meaning when people started realizing this stuff started hitting the news, it took, it creates a headwind. You have a lot of lefties who don't want to vote for Joe Biden, but will swallow their pride to some degree and vote Biden. Those people, however, don't want to vote for Joe Biden. And if you give them a reason where you make it an onerous thing to vote for Joe Biden, well, yeah, your support might dip in regards to people who are going to be looking for somebody else to vote for, who wants to put their name on somebody who might have actually raped somebody. This doesn't look good. That's all. But I do like the fact that 51%, I just wish those people were able to organize and get together, and in getting together, make choices on what they want policy-wise, and use those choices in order to kind of organize and push on the political process and grow, expand. Get everybody in this country who wants Medicare for all backing you in your political disposition, and you will get Medicare for all. You have dollars or pitchforks, and that brings in the pitchforks. That's the only way to get change. I don't know if you could do that from the standpoint of a politician anymore, because a politician can lose, and if the politician loses, it's fucked. If, however, you had a movement that was pushing with that particular politician, you may get change. But I would say this, it is not letting them in office. The moment that you let them in office, you're back to square one. Dilly y'all 357. Let's see. Oh, where is it? I just saw it. ABCD. They suspended the New York primary, right? DNC rushed state primaries in the middle of a pandemic. They don't want to negotiate with burners, delegates, and are afraid more voters will see Biden's incompetence. They have rushed it, right? I mean, the New York primary. See, the problem is this. By the time they hit like South Carolina and whatnot, it was a long space, in which case people just kind of ruminated on this notion of Joe Biden winning. When the pandemic hit and these guys got stuck in their offices and everything else, the proper course would have been to postpone the primaries. The Democratic Party didn't want to postpone the primaries because they wanted to get them over with as fast as possible. They wanted to wrap it up. And if Joe Biden has to go from state to state to state and you can't do anything in those states, then it becomes somewhat difficult to even campaign. The catch here is either you move the election like 2 months in advance, or I guess you could do it like a mail-in, but you have to trust the mail-in. It's not necessarily an easy predicament. By the same token, it just seems like forcing the election to take place in somewhere like Wisconsin was gross, was utterly gross. But they did that because they want him over the finish line as soon as possible. Your health mattered less than getting Joe Biden that win. Yes, I don't think they want people to see his incompetence, but at the same token, Joe Biden is going to have to do something once he gets into the general election. And all of these attacks that were never made on Joe Biden in the election will be made in the general. He will be called slow. He'll be called sleepy. They'll show the thing where Joe Biden fell asleep in the interview or in the endorsement. He is going to get hammered. Sanders did not do Joe Biden a favor by not going after him. In fact, that was the worst thing that he could have done. Yeah, that was the worst thing he could have done. Biden was cash-strapped in several states, if you remember. And so it became an optics thing, not necessarily a ground game thing, which is why I make the argument before about the way you go after Biden, creating this resonance around the fact that he lies. and then tying that to what's taking place in the campaign, not to mention making an argument about electability and that all of these other people lost, this guy would do the same. But he didn't do that. He's just not the person to do it. My corpse might vote for Biden. But yeah, I think they were trying to rush it. They wanted to get it over with. Honestly, I didn't care about the New York primary. Now, the reason I didn't care entirely about the New York primary because I thought it was symbolic. If 30 million people that are now unemployed would come together on Medicare for all and any grads, real change could be made. Dilly all 357. Yes, that's my point. That's my point. Like, you don't have to agree with me politically on everything. None. In fact, you can think this guy is a dirty lefty or whatever. You can think whatever you want to think. Do you agree that people should have health care? Yes or no? And whatever you think of me, if the answer is yes, stand right here, you're my brother. You ask the other person, do you agree with Medicare for all? Are you a Democrat or Republican? I'm neither. I don't care about that. Do you want Medicare for all? And when that person says yes, yes, right here, you're my brother. And you get all of these people around the country to come around to the same notion that, oh, right, the government is supposed to work for human beings, and we do have leverage in the political system in the way that we organize, the way that we protest, and the way that we vote, not to mention the way that we spend our dollars. But the public is never activated in thinking about politics in that way. Typically, they're just in this kind of survival mode of trying to get from point A to point B. Not to mention the public has been so dejected because the political system doesn't necessarily give gains. So the public has to get involved. I'm making the point that that involvement is not in the political parties. That involvement is all of these people, like you said, standing side by side. We want Medicare for all. We want to get rid of student debt. We want an increase in Social Security. And you make that your case and your argument. And you stand on that. And you get millions of people to do it. If you had 30 million people, let's say you had 10 million in the various states, you may have the capacity, even with small numbers, to make them lose. If you consider the numbers that were in like Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, those races were somewhat narrow. You don't need 20 million people in order to make your strategy work of trying to get political concessions. You just need the ability to make them lose, and where it's credible and known and understood that you can make them lose in order to get some level of negotiation between the power structure versus you and your group. The moment you get the negotiation, and by the way, negotiations is literally what labor unions do, meaning the union is working with a stronger organization, meaning the corporate body, the company itself. And at some point, the company is making certain laws and rules that the people and the workers don't like. They think they're being exploited or taken advantage of, and those workers strike. When they're striking, they're hurting themselves in this process. Also, they're not getting the same wages, none of that stuff. They're outside, they're being cranky, they're being angry, and they're showing their signs and whatnot. Management is also taking a loss because that product, that thing, that service is not being done until management acknowledges and deals with some kind of relation between the union and the company. I'm making the point that the same thing is true in politics. If you are trying to get something accomplished, you use whatever you have to leverage against what you want. If you can bring a large number of people and say, look, these people will back you or not back you based on the policies that you're pushing, well, that's leverage. The capacity to pull your support away in mass is leverage. If you're willing to use that leverage, you may be able to get Medicare for all. You may be able to get rid of student debt. But until the public realizes that that's not a party structure thing, working in a party structure filters the stuff out. It has to be done on the outside. I don't think that's impossible. I just don't know how to do it. All right, I'm going to end this here because I'm beginning to drag ass. Like, share, and subscribe. Thanks all.